actually improve our economy.
Communities are strong because of the immigrants.
Another invader perpetuating some violent crime.
They're very content to let it remain broken.
Other nations do not like mass immigration.
We're going to build a wall. It's going to be built.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the stream. From ZeroHedge, this is The Border Presents. I'm Emily Jashinsky, joined by my co-host at Counterpoints, Ryan Grimm.
I'm Ryan Grimm. I'm a reporter at The Intercept. Emily here, a reporter at Unheard as of about the last week.
That's right.
We co-host Counterpoints, which is on the Breaking Points channel, which is a bit confusing. Our show's out Wednesdays and Fridays. We're here with these esteemed gentlemen to figure out the border.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to solve the problem, and we can't wait for that. So I'll introduce everyone, and then we'll go into some kind of broad opening statements and work our way through this really important and timely debate. Robbie Suave joins us from Reason, where he's a senior editor, and also you may know him as the host of Rising, which he hosted
Used to be the host of Ryan.
It just should have been called Ryan.
Wonderful reunion. I love sharing a podium set up with
We used to call our show Robbie and Ryan Riff on Rogan.
Yeah, too much. We're also joined by Chase Oliver, who's a 2024 Libertarian presidential nominee. Chase, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, now over here on this side, we are separated by pro and anti. So on the anti side, but you guys can add some nuance to that.
Am I anti-border? What am I anti?
Well, I was going to say immigration.
Okay, no, they're the anti-border guys.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that. So Jack Posobiec, senior editor at Human Events, welcome.
Thank you so much.
All right, Ryan Grodowski, he's a political consultant and also writes the Nat Pop Substack. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, well, we're going to start with some broad opening statements. Ryan, why don't you present our esteemed panelists here with the question?
All right, Robbie, we can start with you. We can work our way down there. Immigration, good or bad?
In the United States.
Yes, I think immigration is good. So I would never describe myself as anti-border or open borders. I think nations do have the right to assert borders. But the fundamental question is, ought we to make it easier to come to the country legally and participate in the economic development of the country, have immigrants who work here and contribute to our civic and cultural life and help us make this country better? We're all, obviously, most of us, descended from people who immigrated to America at some point. It's kind of a cliche that this is a nation of immigrants, but it's true. And the reality is we have a lot of immigrants here. We have illegal immigrants, and then the question becomes, how should we deal with that? I think everyone is watching. This is called the Southern Border Debate. People are watching the chaos at the southern border, people streaming over in unsafe conditions for them, contributing to chaos and disorder for some people in border towns. I absolutely agree that is far from ideal, and that is a strain. It's a burden for a lot of people. The way to fix that, because we can't have magic empower the government solutions that never actually work. The way to fix that would be make a system that is easier for people to come here, to be vetted, so we keep out criminals, terrorists, etc., and have them legally work here, pay taxes here, and then you wouldn't have so many people resorting to desperate, unsafe measures entering the country the way they are. So I say yes to immigration, yes to legal immigration, more legal immigration, shift people from the illegal category into the legal category by making the laws safer and deregulated.
Let's go to Ryan for immigration, good or bad.
Thank you for having me. I believe that the state we're in right now in our country, there are more immigrants than we've ever had before, both percentage-wise and by number. It's over 50 million. It's increased by 6 million since Joe Biden, in the last few years since Joe Biden took office. Stopping mass immigration is the most important issue in our country because it makes immigration affects every other issue. How long does it take to get a hospital bed? How many seats are in a classroom? What does it cost for the welfare state? How many people will be imprisoned? And most importantly, who will vote in our country, in the future of our country? Immigrants vote overwhelmingly for Democrats. They believe overwhelmingly in progressive ideas. They don't share the ideas of our constitutional republic. They can get there over many generations, but when you have immigration at our current rate, what you're doing is you're voting to end yourself as you once were. It will still be America. It will just be a much, much different version of America. In the 2016 election, because it's the only election they had exit polls for, people born outside the country voted 3-1 for Hillary Clinton, while a plurality of Americans voted for Donald Trump. She only won the popular vote and almost became president simply because we decided to import so many people who believe in the idea of big government and will continue to believe in the idea of big government. My position is, a lot of people would sit there and say, it's French to sit there and say we want to support lower levels of legal immigration, but even the Cato study from 2021 sat there and found that 44% of Americans want to reduce legal immigration by at least 90%. 61% want to cut immigration by at least 50%. This is, and that was before Biden took office and blew the gates open at the border. This is the popular opinion. This is the opinion that people want of their representative. And if it wasn't for Democrats vying for votes and Republicans vying for donations from the Chamber of Commerce, then we would probably get what we want. And I'll close by saying this. I think, immigration, to paraphrase Hillary Clinton, should be safe, legal, and rare. And hopefully one day it will be.
Bruce, immigration, good, bad?
Well, I am somebody who supports immigration. I support the economic activity that immigration creates, the fact that immigrants have started tons of businesses in this country, their children start lots of businesses in this country, and I'm a free marketer, and I believe that labor is capital. I believe you should be able to come to this country and, exercise your full economic potential, which many people can't in their nation of origin. We have so many people who have started Fortune 500 companies as immigrants or the children of immigrants. We have millions of small businesses in this country that are created by immigrants. In fact, immigrants create small businesses at a greater rate than their current, than their statistics of the population. They create 17% of small businesses. They're 14% of the people here. And so, for me, I see immigration as a pro-economic argument that, yes, I understand that we live in a welfare state, but the truth is, if you look at the numbers in a state like Texas, in 2018, $428 million is actually the amount of money that was drawn into the system in excess, not taken away by immigrants. So immigrants actually create economic growth, they invest in their communities, and they pay taxes, by the way. They pay sales taxes, they pay excise taxes, they pay property taxes as property owners or renters. And I would like more people to be able to come here, work under a legal framework, because that's where the real crisis is. The crisis is not that we have immigration in this country. The crisis is that we have a government that does a terrible job of processing people to come here and work. And working here does not mean instant citizenship, though that process is also time-consuming and costly and far too long for someone to become a citizen. But I know immigrants. I meet them all day, every day. And let me tell you, there are people who are, no more people who are more patriotic than people who come here from somewhere else and can make something of themselves here in the United States. And, I hear your argument about they vote for Democrats. That's a marketing problem from Republicans, not a problem amongst immigrants, because immigrants come here usually escaping big government totalitarianism from somewhere else. They are more likely to be Christian and want to participate in the two-parent household, have strong family connections. And so there are a lot of areas where immigrants should actually be the natural people that Republicans are able to market to. I can't help it that Republicans are bad at doing that. But what I do know is that immigrants who want to come here, want to make something of themselves, contribute to this economy. And I want to see more of them come here in a way that's orderly, in a way that allows us to check who's coming in here to make sure they're not dangerous. But for the most part, that needs to be the one barrier. If you're dangerous, you shouldn't be coming to this country. If you want to come here to work, create economic output.
So we're going to have a lot to break down. Before we do, Jack, give us your immigration good or bad take.
Well, yeah, I think that's kind of a gotcha question to begin with. We all can see the benefit of having.
No, there's a right answer.
Of saying yes, no, because I'm obviously side more with Ryan that the current level of immigration is bad. Could there be a level of immigration that is good? I'm open to discussion, but the current level of mass immigration and mass importation of foreigners is bad. But I'd rather actually cede my own time and take a moment of silence, if we could, for Jocelyn Nungary, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, and Kate Steinle, who are the victims of the open border.
So, Jack, you're ceding entirely now.
Thank you.
Okay. Noted. So a lot of overlap, but then also some big points of tension in everything that's been outlined so far. Let's start with this question of danger, because off the point that Jack just made, there have been some high-profile issues. There have been some high-profile crimes committed by people who were here illegally, whether they were abusing the asylum system, whether they had overstayed visas, a lot of different results there, or maybe they crossed the border illegally in the first place. According to ICE, last year, 73,822 non-citizens with a criminal history were arrested. Those were just numbers of people who were arrested. So my question to both of you, and you can jump in if you want to answer it first, but we'll go in whatever order you two choose, is it possible right now, with the levels of immigration that we've seen, according to the Washington Post, that's at least 2 million people a year under Joe Biden, to screen for people whether they're dangerous? This is something that you said, Chase. If people are dangerous, that should be the one barrier. Is it possible in this current immigration system, or what more, if anything, needs to be done to vet people when you have 2 million at least coming in a year, whether that's through asylum or illegal crossings or overstaying visas, whatever it is?
I would say it's difficult. It's extremely difficult to vet them under the current system of them flooding across the southern border and claiming asylum. My goal would be to reduce the number of people who are coming by that means, and then we could have stronger border protection for the people who are still resorting, who I think are more likely to be criminal or have some reason they wouldn't want to submit themselves to government questioning when they're trying to come in. If we made the process for everyone else easier, we would have less people coming in ways that we can't monitor, abusing the asylum system, which we probably all agree is not a good system for figuring these things out. We have people come in, claim asylum, even though it's meant for political fugitives, which applies to some of these people. I think that it's been stretched by all definition for the vast majority of people claiming it.
Right.
And then they're here until a court date some years in the future that can't be monitored. Whether they can work in that period is very ambiguous. It's just, no one should support this. It makes no sense. The violent crimes that have been committed by illegal immigrants are unconscionable. They are awful. Those people should be brought to justice to the full extent of the law. But we will probably all agree they should be, if they were legal immigrants, if they were native-born citizens, whoever does these violent crimes should be responsible. So then you have to get into, well, are the illegal immigrants responsible for a larger share of the crime than other categories? And statistics over and over again find that no. We've just had a massive murder spike in the city we're in, Washington, D.C. last year. You can look at those statistics. It's awful. It needs to be dealt with. It's not illegal immigrants doing it. It's the native-born population. It's poor African-American people in the poorer parts of the city who have been here for generations. So it's a problem. It's got to be dealt with, and it should be talked about. But the illegal immigrants being responsible for the crime we're seeing in our cities, it's responsible for some of them, certain, and we got to keep those people out. But it doesn't make any statistical rationale. And in the same way that some liberals will say that, look, assault weapons, look, this was used in another violent shooting, but then people who understand guns better know that the vast majority of people are using these weapons responsibly, and they're actually in a small minority of gun cases, so we would not, I don't want them all banned for that reason, because I'm a libertarian. It's a similar argument.
And so, Chase, my definition actually of closing the borders is tightening our asylum laws, making them more just and more fair so that people who desperately need asylum actually can get asylum. What do you make of that question? To Robbie's point, we probably all agree that our asylum system is a mess. Is that closing the border if we tighten asylum loopholes?
No, but if you do that in conjunction with actually easing the restrictions on people who want to come here peacefully and just work, which is most people, I would proverbially 99.9% of libertarian or of immigrants want to come in here, just come across the border, get a job, work, provide for their family. And if we allowed a system that made it easier for those people to come through, just come right through, submit yourself to a background check in a 21st century Ellis Island model, and then come right in and get to work, well, that eases the strain on law enforcement to actually take care of those who are human trafficking across the border. They're not going to come through a port of entry if you're human trafficking. You're not going to come through a port of entry if you're carrying tons of fentanyl that's been pressed to look like Xanax pills that's going to cause the next OD in our communities. Those are the people that we need to be having law enforcement stopping, right? But
although most drugs do come through legal ports of entry.
Yeah, and that is ultimately that has to do with the fact that we have a huge appetite for drugs and the war on drugs and the crime that creates. By the way, much of the immigrant crime that we see in this country is a direct result of drug crime that comes from cartels. If we ended the war on drugs, we would remove the profit motive for much of that violence that we see in our neighborhoods. And if we had more open immigration, if we didn't have immigrants who are fearing the police, fearing that they might have to see their papers and get deported, well, in these immigrant communities, you have more people more likely to go to the police when something happens because they don't fear themselves being deported. And so we had a more open immigration system for people who want to come here peacefully. It would make all of our communities safer because we would be able to actually have immigrants participating in the process as opposed to living in the shadows, which creates black markets, which creates crime, and which creates violence in our neighborhoods. And I don't want that. I don't think anybody here wants that. But I think the solution in terms of immigration is to ease the process for those who want to come here peacefully. And yes, if you are seeking political, asylum from political persecution, there should be a process for that. And I would wager that somebody who gets stopped at the border and they say, hey, you're wanted for a crime, and they say, that's a politically motivated crime, I'm claiming asylum. Well, then you go through that process. Right now, the asylum process is totally broken.
So, Jack, what's wrong with that argument?
Everything.
Okay.
Completely everything. So, for example, with what Robbie was saying about how, yes, U.S. citizens do commit crimes, and you're right that it is predominantly when you're talking about homicide, violent crime, there's an African-American rate that is clearly higher. That's a separate category of this. What's different is that non-citizen crime, specifically when it's by illegals, can actually be reduced to zero because none of these people should be here to begin with. So if they're not here, they will not be able to commit the crimes. It's Quite simple.
If you take everybody's guns, then they won't be able to shoot anybody, right?
You have to be able to stab people, you're able to beat up people. You can kill a person a lot of ways, Ryan. You can kill a person a lot of ways.
But is this prohibition for people, as Chase was just saying?
Of course. It's prohibition for foreign people.
Then is there downstream effects similar to, as we saw, is the metaphor that a lot of
Right, Robbie
libertarians
makes
will
an
make?
interesting point. I mean, the left says, look at all this gun violence perpetrated by these people with these assault weapons.
We have a
should ban
right
assault
to
weapons.
the Second Amendment in this country. We have many rights in this country, which by the way, these immigrants vote for parties that completely deride, like the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. By
Right,
the
but
way,
we
these are what the immigrants vote against.
Yeah, we
And
decided
so
we had that right.
when we decide we have these rights, no foreign citizen has a right to become a citizen. No foreigner has a right to cross the border and walk into our country. And even claims of asylum, this is not a right. This is clearly not a right. Now, UN, of course, would disagree with me on that, but this is not a right in our Constitution whatsoever. In fact, the Constitution gives the government broad latitude to govern this and administer it as they see fit. And so any government, the next one, Chase wants to try to be the next president over here, that you would actually have the ability through a lot of controls and working with Congress or others to be able to set that, because these are not constitutional rights. Again, no person has a right. I can't walk over to China and say I have a right to be a citizen. I lived in China for a couple of years. I don't have a right to citizenship. Doesn't matter how much I learn Mandarin or assimilate to the culture. I have no right whatsoever to those things. The Second Amendment, of course, is a right, and it is the right of self-defense, which is the expressive right to this right to life.
I guess we're getting lost in the point here. The Second Amendment is a right because as Americans, when we created the country,
You're the guys who
we
brought it up.
decided that it was going to be a right. We could just as equally decide that we want it to be a right that people can come here, as we did throughout the entire
please put it on the ballot. Let's see
throughout
how
the
it
entire
goes.
19th century. We had basically
Ryan, do you think that will do well on the ballot?
open borders. So Ryan, what
Yeah,
was,
super well.
what was wrong with 19th century American immigration policy?
It was fine for the 19th century, but we're not in the 19th century anymore. You
Because
cannot
why?
have
Because
time.
why?
That's how time works. We
Because-
leave a year and then we go to the next year.
To be fair, time is
and
an
over
illusion.
many years,
Yeah.
we're in a different century.
Excuse me, time is a flat
So
circle.
Yes.
you cannot have a 19th century immigration policy in a 21st century economy.
But the
21st
Second
century.
Amendment from 1789, that one.
That
Or
has nothing to do.
1791.
I mean,
Which is
I'm not
right.
getting lost in semantics.
Yeah.
The truth is, and I have this big basic question to Chase and Robbie. What is the number? We bring in 1.1 to 1.2 million legal immigrants per year. That's not good enough. That's the most any country in the world takes. What's the number then?
Do you think the federal government knows the exact number of people who should be allowed to enter the country every year? They don't know
They
how
said
much
it.
lumber we should
They
have.
said
They
it.
don't.
Do
You
you?
can't
But they-
centrally
do you
plan
know?
the economy.
But they
I don't.
said
The
it.
market should determine it.
So as many companies, so if I have a nonsense LLC that I'm using to get visas for people from India, Nepal, wherever,
Yeah.
and they're paying me, and I claim that's a business, but I'm just bringing in as many as I possibly can.
Bringing in people here to work and enrich our economy.
Yeah, sure, I can
and
make
be
them all.
like,
I
what's
can
the?
make them all mow lawns, and just sit there.
We don't
I
need people to
charge-
mow lawns. I don't like people doing work. That sounds great
no,
to me.
no, you don't though. But so as long as corporations sponsor, then that's our immigration system. They could so every
you're gonna
American
create
worker.
these
Wait.
mills
Every
and
American worker then needs to be in constant competition with the cheapest labor in the world.
Yeah, that
That's-
argument holds no water with everybody's in competition for
No, they're
with
not.
other people for their
No,
jobs.
they're not. That
and
is not
that's-
true. Someone who mows a lawn actually in
You have a right to a
In
lawn mowing
Virginia,
job at a certain
you are
wage.
not
This
in
is the leftist argument.
No, it's not. You're not in competition for a
Explicitly
nickel a
leftist
day.
argument.
That's the truth, though. Mass immigration would absolutely deplete that.
Yeah, my
A company could constantly
great-grandfather
sit there and just
repaired
undercut-
horse and buggies for a living. Then a little thing called the car comes
But that's
around, and he doesn't have a job anymore. That's how
That's
the economy
not okay.
works.
But so my
Sorry.
question. So my
You're-
so wait. Your fundamental answer is there should be no limit.
The economy arguments are nonsense. There should be limits for crime and
not-
violence.
no, so-
I
so
understand
there's
the
no-
economy.
so
and
there
let's
is-
give
so
Chase
it-
a second here.
Yeah, so I think the number is the number that the economy wants to have workers who come here. That's the number that we're looking
But
for.
we have a welfare state.
Yeah, and I oppose it at every step of the way.
Great.
So what do
but
we
that
do
doesn't
now?
mean anything.
Yeah, but it does mean
because the
anything.
welfare state position is less popular than the
Listen,
immigration
listen.
position.
I'm from- welfare state.
Listen,
Let's
I'm,
let
listen,
Chase-
I'm from the
let's
state
let
of
Chase-
Georgia,
that
right?
would vote
Agriculture
against-
is one of
that
our
would vote for the
largest
welfare state.
industries. Agriculture is one of the largest industries in the state that I'm from. And there are plenty of farmers who vote red every year, but they will tell you they need immigrant labor. They need people to work on the
Only
farm.
because-
And why do they need the labor? Because A, native-born people are not doing the jobs. Okay. Secondly, they know they need the labor because they need to have people who are there for planting and harvesting season. If we ease immigration, if we ease the ability for people to come here just to work. By the way, nobody is saying citizenship. We're all saying come here to work. If you want to come here to work, come here during planting and harvesting. Take your money back with you south of the border where you can be with your family. Right now what we have is we have people coming to work on farms during planting and harvesting. They can't go back home because they know the difficulty of coming back up here. They send their money back home and they stay here on charity, on welfare, because they have to.
Okay,
Many
that's
people
a
would be
like
seasonal
90% of
employees.
what you say is completely
All right,
nonsense because the
response.
farm visas
Let's
are
go
so
ahead, Ryan.
large. Wait, farm visas are incredibly large. That's a total bullshit answer. But the one thing is one, all those jobs will be automated. If they're not already, we have machines that can pick strawberries, plant crops, pick tomatoes, whatever you want. All those jobs.
Are you going to propose a law against that to protect those jobs?
No, the
a law
problem is
to
that
protect those jobs because we have to keep them?
No, we do them because you have a servant class. Taxpayers subsidize cheap migration so big farmers, big agriculture doesn't have to mechanize. Japan doesn't starve every year, and they don't have 1 million Mexicans walking across the border to pick rice. That's just the truth. You're subsidizing big companies with cheap labor. That's all you are. But you believe in the service. It's like Kelly Osbourne. Who's going to clean your toilet, Donald Trump? That is how you look at these people. They don't have to get citizenship. They don't have to get any protections. They can work for a nickel an hour, get their arms chopped off, ship them back
Oh,
to
I listen to these people. They want to do it. You're taking away their agency. You look at these people as unworthy of doing this. Get out of our country. They want to come here and do these jobs, and I say,
And also-
you know what? The government should not get in the way of that.
Robbie, there was a company over in, I'm sorry, last thing I promise.
Then we'll get
There was a
back.
company over in Chicago. They had 800 illegal alien workers. Finally, a black employee blew the whistle, and they found 800 black people in Chicago to take those jobs, and everyone got a raise. There is not a single industry in this country, not one, where a majority of the entire workers are foreign-born.
We could artificially
There is not one, and there is-
inflate the price of everything in the country by, mandating that
That's
only
not how the
people
market works either.
native-born be hired
No
at a
one's
higher
gonna
wage.
buy a donut for
Inflation is the
$100.
number one concern of people in America right now, and this is a proposal
So,
to make everything,
servant
everything,
labor is
housing,
the only
food,
answer.
energy, more
Not
expensive.
destroying the currency, not any of this. It's just servant labor.
Do you want
That's
do
what it
people
is.
watching want higher prices?
Jack,
don't.
say what you were going to say.
So we've been talking a lot about corporations, farmers, big ag. Ryan's talking about, and obviously we're talking about agricultural workers coming across the border, but I don't hear a lot of people talking about the concerns of actual American workers and American citizens. And the idea is that unfortunately there are people, and it's just natural that there are going to be people who are in that working class bracket. There are going to be families that are in that bracket, black, brown, white, whatever, that are going to be there. So what you're saying is that it's totally fine, and this is your platform. You're running to represent these people, Chase, in government, and you're telling them that it's totally fine by you that they should have to compete with people from other countries who are going to undercut them and put downward pressure on wages and put downward pressure on their ability to get any of these jobs or get access to any of this market, but that's okay because it's good for the big ag.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you increase legal immigration, these people wouldn't be being undercut by being in the black market of
So you
labor.
hope they vote for you?
No, these people would not be able to vote. These people would be coming here as immigrants. These people can come here to work. They can come here to compete on a level playing field as workers who are not here in the shadows, who are not here legally, who are here with a legal status that allows them to actually compete with American jobs, thus stopping the undercutting of wages. You're not actually competing in a true free market, which should exist. Yes,
But
I'm going to
it's
support
still
free market
going to be
economics. Please let me
downward
finish.
pressure
Now,
on
here's the other
workers.
thing about this, is that immigrants create jobs. They create businesses. They create economic output. And this are things that Americans buy, Americans hire, Americans are hired by immigrants. So they increase the economic share. They increase the economic pie. And so for me to say, oh, well, all of a sudden immigration is bad. No, immigration is good. It has always built this country. It's what built this country in the 19th and into the 20th century with the mass immigration we had the last wave through Ellis Island. It will continue to build this country because that's what it's doing right now. It's building Fortune 500 companies that are creating millions of jobs right now. It's creating small businesses all over the country that are hiring people in mom and pop shops right now that are owned by immigrants or children of immigrants. I live with an immigrant success story. I live with somebody whose father came here, worked on a farm, and guess what? They're the first person to ever be educated, to go to law school, and now they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year more than they would if they had had their parents remain in Mexico, where they were from. So yes, I support the free movement of labor. I support the free movement of capital. And I support a free market.
Do you at least admit, though, that there is a trade-off for the people who are currently living here now, who are in competition with all of these people that you're for bringing over for education, for work, for all of the things that you just mentioned? Do you at least admit that there's a trade-off there?
Can I answer that? I would
Well,
say it's largely
I'm
a
asking
positive
Chase.
trade-off.
I'm
is
asking
what
Chase.
there is a trade-off.
I'm not hearing an answer about trade-offs.
Well, I'm saying there is a trade-off, but it's largely positive because we're all consumers. We're not all workers in the same field. Yes, whenever if someone starts another if you work at a Blockbuster and someone starts another video rental company from you across the street, is that going to be good for you? Probably not. But the
You really do want an old system here.
increased
man.
competition
Blockbuster.
overall is better. For, like it's just the most basic like economic 101.
This is kind of,
to
are we
have
all
more
millennials, by the way?
competition.
Have we established
Can I
that?
just mention
Ryan, we can grandfather you in.
This is such a nonsense argument, though, about Fortune 500 companies. There was like this whole entire report about them. They come from like 10 countries, none of which make up the top 10 people coming to this country.
Can we have more of the people from there?
Sure, Israel, that would upset Ryan a lot. Israel, Russia, France, Italy, China, India, Australia, Canada. There you go.
So we can have all the immigrants except the ones from Mexico and the South America?
Guess how many Mexicans have made a Fortune 500 company? How many Mexicans have made a $1 billion? No,
how many Mexicans have made a small business? That's
How
the
many
largest?
Mexicans have made a $1 billion company?
How many?
No. You mentioned Fortune 500s. How many Mexicans?
Yeah, I also mentioned small businesses, which is the largest driver creator of jobs in this country.
It's LLCs.
This
Small
doesn't
business creates more jobs than the Fortune 500 companies.
No, they don't.
This is the Motte and Bailey here.
But how many is my
agricultural
question?
workers
How many
equal Fortune 500
Mexicans have
companies?
ever made a $1 billion business in this country?
I'm not worried.
One. Out of 11.7 million, one. You
Doesn't
have better
Carlos
chance
Slim
of being
own the
struck
New
by
York Times?
lightning twice than you do to find a Mexican national in this country making a $1 billion business.
Let's deport everyone who did not start a
100
Fortune 500 company.
understand
We'll just have a country for 16 people.
All right, Ryan.
Israel made 100 Israelis made Fortune 500
Is the worth of a human being based on how much money they
Yeah,
create?
Clearly, because that's all you're talking about.
Ryan.
That's all you're talking about.
These people create communities, they create families, they create
Your original
life.
Yeah,
question.
they lose social
All
trust.
right,
and social
let's yield to our
justice.
my own role as a moderator on my
Yeah.
show is making me want our
Your own-
moderators
your-
to be allowed to jump in.
Yeah, you were asking about the trade-offs generally for families. Either you guys ever been to, and you mentioned at the beginning not being able to get a hospital bed. I'm sure you guys travel this country. You've been to medical centers or hospitals in rural America? Mm-hmm. Have you? Mm-hmm. What do you notice about the medical staff, the doctors?
Yes, there's a shortage.
What do you notice
of labor.
about both the shortages and what do you notice about the nationalities of the medical staff?
In
the doctors?
Kentucky that I went to, there wasn't a ton of. It was mostly white people.
Really?
Yes. And when I went to
If
rural
you look it
Kentucky,
up, I
yes.
bet most of them are like Pakistan.
You're probably wrong though. But that's neither here nor there. Yes, we do.
How is that neither here nor there?
I think it's 10,000 a
because
year the
once
cap
it-
on Indian immigrants. A lot of high-skilled, highly intelligent
Here's the
people
thing
love
about
to have
no,
more than
we're gonna get to that in a minute, actually.
Here's where
Yeah,
Robbie's
go
completely
ahead,
wrong
Ryan.
on that point, though. We get higher skilled immigrants when we have fewer immigrants from a certain country. So, perfect example: Algerians. We take in very few Algerians, but our Algerian immigrants have a higher education standard than our Japanese immigrants because we take so few. We take in very few Indian immigrants. India is a much poorer country, GDP per capita, than Mexico. Yet our Indians are far superior in income than our Mexicans are. Why? We took 0.003% of Indians and we took 16% of Mexicans' entire population. What happens if we take 10% of India's population, 145 million people?
We'd have a lot more doctors.
No, we get a ton of poor people. We get a ton of poor people and a welfare state that can't possibly
is
do.
going to be a doctor.
And you educate them.
100%.
Of course, and
Poor people
because
need to
there's
do- there's
infinite
jobs for
money,
poor
there's
people
infinite
too.
classroom
Yeah.
sizes, there's tons of teachers that know every Indian dialect to sit there and teach them English. This is moronic. This doesn't exist in the real world. That's not how anybody actually lives.
Well, your
Except
last
that
name's
we have a
Gerdusky.
nation
I'm
built by immigration.
Jasinski.
We're
I
living in-
imagine
we're
our
living in the real
ancestors
world right
didn't
now.
come here with a whole lot of potential in the same way that H-1B.
Well, on
Visas
my
off.
dad's mom's side, they did come from the Mayflower. But when like my Italian and Polish did, yes, my great-great-grandfather when he came from Italy didn't speak English or read in Italian. Do we
Mine too.
want some, congratulations, do we want somebody who can't speak English or read in their own native language? What is the financial cost on us as a nation to educate?
Or the social cost.
Well, if you're having endless immigration, right, no barriers, and 300 million people, because that's the number who want to come here, we doubled the entire U.S. population. The cost to educate the world's poorest is out. What are we? A charity? No, we are a country. These are our people. People can't afford pay taxes now. I mean, the few that do, they can't afford to pay taxes now. Imagine paying the welfare state of the entire world in our country?
Yeah, so let's roll this clip actually of Donald Trump on the All In podcast last week talking about actually a fairly common libertarian position, stapling green cards to people's diplomas who are here on student
Maybe
visas.
I'm going to vote for him instead.
We'll
Sorry,
see what happens. Here's Donald Trump on All In.
15 minutes.
The more important point, I think, Mr. President, is We need high-skilled workers in this country.
Yes.
We need to recruit the best and brightest from the world. Every
I
time we
agree.
get somebody super intelligent from India or Europe, any country, that's
Three of us
one
are
less-
immigrants, sir.
Yeah, and 3 of the 4 here are immigrants, the ones without the ties. And we can get these great people into our country, and that's a loss for our adversaries and our competitors, and it's a gain for us. But I've never heard you talk about this. Can you please promise us you will give us more ability to import the best and brightest around the world to America?
I do promise, but I happen to agree. That's why I promise. Otherwise, I wouldn't promise. Let me just tell you that it's so sad when we lose people from Harvard, MIT, from the greatest schools and lesser schools that are phenomenal schools also. And what I wanted to do, and I would have done this, but then we had to solve the COVID problem because that came in and, sort of dominated for a little while, as you perhaps know. But what I want to do and what I will do is you graduate from a college, I think you should get automatically as part of your diploma a green card to be able to stay in this country. And that includes junior colleges too. Anybody graduates from a college, you go in there for 2 years or 4 years. If you graduate or you get a doctorate degree from a college, you should be able to stay in this country. And you know more stories than I do, but I know of stories where people graduated from a top college or from a college and they desperately wanted to stay here. They had a plan for a company, a concept, and they can't. They go back to India, they go back to China, they do the same basic company in those places, and they become multi-billionaires employing thousands and thousands of people, and it could have been done here. And a bigger example is you need a pool of people to work for your companies. You have great companies, and they have to be smart people. Not everybody can be less than smart. You need brilliant people. And we force the brilliant people, the people that graduate from college, the people that are number one in their class from the best colleges, you have to be able to recruit these people and keep the people.
Jack, Ryan, I mean, guy's making some sense, isn't he?
No, he's
No, I don't agree at all.
No, he's totally wrong. Because then you just make colleges, junior colleges, failing. Bernie Sanders' wife ran a college. It was a complete failure.
Colleges into visa mills.
Bernie
I stand
Sanders
with our president.
Bernie Sanders.
Over
Bernie
legitimate president?
Bernie.
I wish.
Okay, so here's a question then. This is basically what you have there are venture capitalists, billionaires basically begging Donald Trump to increase these legal pathways and to bring high-income immigrants or high-earning potential immigrants, more of them in. Is that anything that makes you uncomfortable as libertarians, or are you all for it?
I support bringing in people that the market wants to bring in. I think highly skilled labor is great. I think if you come to this country and you come to this country to get an education, yeah, you should absolutely be able to stay here if you want to stay here. If you believe that's where you're going to make the most money, that's where you're going to have the most economic input for yourself and for your family, yeah, I think you should be afforded that opportunity. I'm not opposed to that at all.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because I can't keep up with where the right is on different populist issues. But it seems kind of counterintuitive that you would say, look, we're going to say no. If an immigrant graduates from an American college, we're not going to give them a green card. We're going to invest in that, and then we're going to build the school, and then we're going to send them back to their country. They can work there. But we're also going to do giant tax cuts and cut the Department of Education and cut funding and do a bunch of charter schools and undermine the university system and public education in the country. Which then, from the perspective of those CEOs, they're like, Christ, you're not letting me bring in the immigrants, and you're also not educating the already existing population. So, am I wrong?
About a million things you just said.
But all right, excellent.
Okay, so
I said, I can't keep
well,
up.
You keep a lot of facts either.
This is old Republican.
The best state in this country for education, K through 8, is Massachusetts. Not a big, not a big state for lots of charter schools. 57% of 4th and 8th graders in Massachusetts cannot read or write. And that's in the public school system. Among blacks, which is almost universal in the public system, it's closer to 80%, and that's our best state. That's not in a red state, that's Massachusetts. And I work in public education, my 1776 project pack, all the time. Public education, improve it, make it better. Cutting the Department of Education doesn't change any of that. Making charter schools doesn't change any of that. Keeping kids in the way that we do schools, which is really just to sit there and reward public sector unions, is a miserable failure and a giant disservice to them. But it also doesn't matter for colleges, for venture capitalists at all. Venture capital, what is going to happen is people in failed colleges will just say, hey, Bernie Sanders' wife had a failed college. She had to shut it down because it was a miserable failure. She'd sit there and say, you know what? Great, we'll port 1,000 Chinese a year. They'll pay for it, they'll get a nonsense degree, and then they'll get a visa for it. Trump University probably would have loved that plan. To sit there and get accreditation, to sit there and do a degree, charge people $10K and they get American citizenship afterwards for any degree. He didn't say a high-skilled degree. You could sit there and go to Columbia University and wave Hamas flags and say death to Jews, and you get a visa.
I agree that the Department of Education should heavily regulate that. We agree.
Jack?
I mean, I largely agree with Ryan. I think what you're going to do is you're going to create situations, I've said it a couple times, but you're going to create diploma mills. And so you're going to have situations where the coursework is not rigorous. You're going to have classes where people are, where these colleges barely get by on accreditation, and people are going to get visa mills out of this, and they're going to come in and say, well, guess what? Now I'm in the country, now I can work. And most importantly, now if I've got a green card, I think it's 3 years right now, 5 years for green card right now. Now within 5 years, now you're voting for Democrats again, which again, this is what the Democrats want. This is what the left wants. The left wants to increase. No, they wouldn't.
Trump would put his face on their
No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't.
But
They
that's
still wouldn't.
separate from the question of
There's
justice.
no.
I think
There's
we're
no.
arguing, are we
There's
arguing over
no
a proposal that
evidence.
Donald Trump wants to do? I don't think Donald Trump wants to do this because he thinks more people are going to vote for Democrats. And I think, again, this is a marketing issue of Republicans, not an issue of immigrants just inherently wanting more Democrats.
So what level of legal immigration are you
We live in a
comfortable
two-party
with?
system.
Yeah. You're
So
in about
so
36 states. It's not a two-party system
What
problem.
levels of legal immigration are you too comfortable with?
Do you want to go first, or you want Jack?
Low.
Okay. You asked them what levels of immigration they would be comfortable with. So turning it back.
I would like net zero immigration.
I've actually been,
yes,
yeah,
net
been
zero. That
following
doesn't mean no one
in
comes in the
Nigel
country.
talking about this, Nigel Parrish.
That doesn't mean no one comes in the country. It just means people leave every year. They die every year. If we're going to have stable and steady population growth over time, we would take in as many as leave, and they'd be the most skilled and the highest quality and the best doctors and whatever, but they wouldn't be someone's second cousin who came in through enough chain migration, which is how 60% of the people come in this country. It's not through these billionaires that Chase is sitting there and dreaming about. It's someone's second cousin who eventually got here through chain migration, or someone walked through the border pregnant, dropped the baby, and collects welfare, which is how most immigrants get their welfare then, and then gets through chain migration through that.
Would you guys get rid of chain migration? Is it feasible?
I would get rid of the welfare state. I would if they're taking out benefits and they're disproportionately receiving more from the state than they're giving in. Yeah, I don't want any of that. But
But you're for chain migration.
we really disagree, I think, strongly on the economic issues. I do want to address the kind of like cultural and political aspect of this. Because on this, look, I'm going to be more, I think, charitable to your argument. Like, if we were in a situation where we were going to get overrun by immigrants that were going to like vote to undo the country and enshrine authoritarianism, Chase might not agree, but or maybe does, I don't know. I would personally think that we are not sentenced to just deal with that. I think it would be okay to consider that as an issue.
Robbie, there's a state called
Let
California.
him finish.
I don't know if you know about this
Let
place.
Robbie finish, and we'll come back.
I am conceding and agreeing that if we were going to be overrun by people who are going to establish an authoritarian hellscape over us, yes, I would think we were going to take steps to prevent that. I think in Europe, they're dealing with more difficult immigration questions because there is more of a antagonistic culture of the Islamic refugees that are coming in there. But we are overrun by people who hate socialism, love Christianity, love Catholicism, particularly my religion, and want to work hard. They are like the most antithetical to the values of the United States are the most highly educated, most elite white and black people whose ancestors have been here for generations. If I wanted to make this country more like right-wing and based and patriotic, I would deport the existing population because they are the people whose values are antithetical to the right and antithetical to Trumpism.
Then we would be in Venezuela, Robbie.
Robbie,
No, if that was true, Robbie,
if
if that was true, why isn't one Latin American country like ours?
They're all leaving to come here. The ones who hate
Oh,
socialism and
that's
hate
just
being
it.
around
Okay.
there are leaving to
then
come
why,
here.
in a poll after poll, I think it was actually a Cato poll, who believes in writing hate speech laws to limit the First Amendment? 82%.
Affluent white people.
No.
Graduates
no,
of Harvard.
No.
Right.
The richest and most privileged people in this
Hispanics
country.
overwhelmingly support creating hate speech laws. So
Liberal
did Asians.
white women who are wealthy and graduate
And
from
who are
Harvard
these
are the
spe-
highest
okay.
demographic.
Find me one election, one presidential election, where they ever voted against the party that's promising them welfare.
In the 2000s, when like 45% of Latinos voted
That's
for
not a
Bush.
majority one, and that exit poll was bullshit. The
What
only
about the
time
Rio
that they
Grande
ever
Valley?
voted-
What about the Rio Grande Valley right now?
what, the one county, Starr County, which is a population of 3,000 people?
I mean, we're seeing surging support for Republican candidates.
Yes,
What do
what
you
you're
mean? How do you
seeing
vote
is-
against the? I would like to vote against the welfare state, which is why I'm probably voting for Chase Oliver.
Yeah.
I can't vote against the welfare state in the form of Donald Trump or Joe
But they're
Biden, which
taking
both
the
support
welfare
massive
state.
government
Look,
spending.
Ron DeSantis literally said in Medicaid in hospitals in Florida, this happened like 2 days ago, you have to sit there and declare whether you are a citizen before you qualify for Medicaid at hospitals in Florida. Medicaid spending in Florida in 1 year dropped 54%. By just asking that question as the population increased. Don't tell me they're not taking welfare. That's complete a lie.
I didn't say they're not taking welfare. We should get rid of the welfare state.
Okay,
Like, we all agree
should,
on that.
We should get rid of murder. But
we
it's just
can't.
not the world we live in. Robbie,
does
live
that
in the
change
world
your-
we live in.
does
The
that
world we
change
live in as a
either of
nation
your-
has been built by immigration.
No,
over
it was built
generations
by
and
Americans.
generations.
Okay, it was built by Americans.
One
It's
second,
owned by
one second, one
Americans.
second, one second,
This-
one
I
second.
wanna
Does the
address that.
reality that we can't get rid of the welfare state change either of your positions on the border?
We also can't deport 20 million immigrants.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
that
can.
would cost-
Oh, yes,
sure we can. Oh, yeah.
If we deport
That would cost
Coming
a
up
trillion
is
of
very
dollars.
easy.
Okay, you're both big. I'm glad that the right has come around on sort of like the Patriot Act and surveillance of Americans being bad, and that the deep state and the administrative state is
These are
being
not
totally
Americans.
weaponized against. Let me finish, against
Oh, I see what you're
Republicans.
saying. Okay.
They appreciate that. In order to deport 20 million people, it costs $1 trillion and would create a vast
It would
new
probably
system
save more
of
over
government
time.
surveillance and control.
Papers
that
down.
Republicans
Violence.
would
It's not-
hate.
Robbie,
They
violence.
would
That's not
hate it for
true.
good reason.
When SB 1070 happened in Arizona, there wasn't this wide, like 25% of the illegal population left on their own. It's called self-deportation. Republicans have been championing this for over 12 years since Romney ran. Like, this is what you do. You sit there and you make things like, hey, no Medicaid at hospitals. Hey, no, let's local police officers, if you get arrested for drunk driving, there's no sanctuary cities protections for you. And you're
Fine,
getting
you get
deported.
arrested for drunk driving, out.
And-
Go
Fine.
to jail.
Criminal
Yeah, go to
activity,
jail and
gone.
get deported.
Then
Done.
you know what? A lot of people getting deported that you probably sit there and support.
Then
a
that
lot
20
of people
million
own
number is getting
businesses.
down really
Yeah,
fast now.
you're
Once
talking
we're
about-
past that.
I don't think the
Literally,
majority of,
they're-
I don't think a
Enforced
large
violence
share of
laws,
the
yeah.
immigrants are the drunk drivers driving down the road right now. I think
It's
most people,
shockingly
I think
high.
most people who are immigrants
over
want to come here, they want to live their
$4,000
life in
alone.
peace, just like the majority of everyone. They just want to come here and work, live, create wealth for themselves, for their families, for their community. And so, yes, there are
But
people
your
who do
contention
bad
was
things for
this
immigrants.
is trillions
Chase,
of dollars. We'd never be able
Chase,
to do it, and
we
we're
d-
showing you exactly how to do it. Plus, by the way, e-verify. So actually
E-Verify
make it
is a
illegal.
slippery slope to a
actually make
security
it
state we do
illegal
not wanna have.
to kind of like voting libertarian.
Everyone's on camera all the time anyway, including us right now.
Okay, that's a great pitch to the
that's-
American people. Everyone's on camera all the time.
You
anyway. You're
are.
gonna be on camera all
But
the time,
you
so we can make
are
sure
on
there's
camera
no
all
illegal.
the time.
Robbie, we're
That's
on
the
camera
truth,
right
though.
now.
We're
Yeah,
on
so-
camera all the time. One,
Yeah, I
and
think it's a little
two,
different.
we don't make laws for people in foreign countries. We make laws for Americans. A majority of Americans want lower levels of legal immigration. At what point, Chase, you're running for president, do you take their vote into consideration? Because that's what they're asking for. I mean, is
they
it just
asking for $1
strict
trillion
ideology?
to
Let's
be
have
spent?
Chase answer that.
Yes,
question.
yes, they are.
Let's give
Yes.
Chase a
They
chance
want
to
$1
answer.
trillion.
Yes.
Let's
Yeah.
let Chase
I'd love to let the American
Guys,
people raise their hand to that
No,
question.
listen,
Chase,
here's the
no,
answer.
let's
Majority-
let Chase.
It's raised.
The American public, they want to see an immigration system that isn't broken, that doesn't have so much turmoil going on our southern border. People want to see people be able to come here and work in a way that is orderly, that is not disorder and chaos. That is the problem at our southern border. That is what people are against. If we could have a system where we could easily move people in here to come here and work and actually have people move as the market demands, where jobs are needed, and then when jobs aren't, people will self-deport. They'll go where jobs are.
So what would you do right
They'll
away to
never
create
settle
that
down,
system?
They'll never buy
Yeah.
a house.
So
they'll
what-
just
so
sit there and
what-
just-
So I
they'll
want
be
a
like
21st
cows.
century Ellis Island.
Let's
All
get
you
this.
do, basically you pass a reform bill that says if people want to come through a port of entry, they must do it. They must declare who they are. Anybody who does not declare who they are is in here illegally and subject to immediate deportation. Come through our border, declare who you are, give your name, your background. If you're not a criminal, you're not somebody who's seeking to do harm here, come here,
Chase,
work.
Chase,
You're just gonna take their word
no,
for it.
but Chase,
No,
and
I'm going
don't-
to take
Chase,
the fact that we have 21st century technology that can do background checks on people that can.
There are cameras
Chase,
everywhere.
Background checks
Yes,
from
I
where?
Chase,
From where?
Chase,
Where are you getting these background checks?
Chase, Ellis Island, there were 12 million over 33 years. That's 350,000 people a year. You want an Ellis Island every year. There is.
We had
That's
30
what you're
million
calling
people.
for. What?
We had a population
No,
of
under
like 30 million.
under his
That's a great
plan,
point.
under his plan of unlimited sources, you're asking instead of an Ellis Island every 33 years, you're asking for an Ellis Island every
But I'm
year.
not asking
And
for
by the way,
unlimited
one
immigration.
out of-
I'm asking for the immigration that can be-
whoever
that can
just
be
can get an
handled by the
LLC
market.
to sponsor them. And also, a third of people went to Ellis Island had to go home because they couldn't cut it. They couldn't be a drain on the system. They couldn't have a disease. And after they got here, a lot left after that too. 60% of things Southern Italians left.
A lot of Italians left.
Yeah, they couldn't make it. So this is whole dream of like Ellis Island is not real at all. This is like delusional, like libertarian.
Which, by the
You're
way,
making his point.
America
No,
actually already
I'm
existed
not.
before Ellis Island.
Yes.
As a matter of fact. So it wasn't Ellis Island that created America.
No, but Ellis
You keep saying
Island
that
and
over
also
and
the
over.
influx of
Do you
immigration
know what-
created millions of jobs, millions of businesses and communities all over this country. It's the reason why
Did
we
it?
have.
And do you know what-
Yes, it's the reason why
Revolution.
we have a deep. It's the reason why we have Italian
deep
Americans,
state, yeah.
Irish Americans, Polish Americans, German Americans, Americans from all over the world that come here. It's the reason why America is exceptional. If you want to make America
I
great,
noticed
we
you
have to
only
follow.
mentioned European.
No,
Do
I
you-
mentioned the people who came here during Ellis Island. But
do
the
you know
truth
what
is if we want to make America great, we have to continue the
But that's
process
also
of building
coming
this
from-
country up
You know
through
what that also that
migration.
population of Ellis Island did? They were the backbone of FDR's Great Society. They actually did half of the programs you're opposing. They were the ones who built the FDR coalition,
created the
Ellis
welfare state.
Island generation and their children. That's what immigration did. We were a far less tax and a far more, I guess, generally free country before that generation. But we traded in. We said, hey, we want to be more like Italy and more like Eastern Europe that believes in those values. We stopped in 1924 thanks to Calvin Coolidge. You know, we didn't stop Argentina. And they went from being a country richer than Europe to a country poorer than Europe because they sat there and they accepted those values and they changed a country. Bring in the whole world,
Recently,
and we
some
will be
signs of
living
life
in a
in
different country.
Argentina, I will
Comparing
I
our
will say-
economy to Peronism is the most apples and oranges.
They were
You just
close to
talked about
as
slippery
wealthy as
slopes.
us before Peronism.
But when I-
Peronism happened because the Italian
That's a
immigration we
tangent.
stopped.
To be fair, that is a
Aren't you
tangent.
conceding my point that all the scary big government stuff we hate is
Because of
the
mass
values
immigration.
Mass
is the
immigration.
values of the people we already have here, not the values of the people we're bringing in.
No.
That's my whole point.
So more
Chase,
The
Nigerians?
people who
No,
are
Chase,
most
Robbie,
opposed to Donald
that's-
Trump and his agenda are, again, the most affluent, privileged,
Name a
well-educated
single election.
citizens of this
Name
country.
a single election.
Wait,
a
wait, wait,
single.
wait, wait.
No.
Robert,
A
you
single.
suggesting we
No. A
deport
single.
liberals?
Name a single federal election.
If I wanted to deport, yes,
Name
basically.
a single federal election
Well,
where
how about this? This is a
foreign-born
question to you.
population voted for the Republican for less government, for the Libertarian for less government. Name one time.
I mean, I would argue that
It's never
voting as a
happened.
Republican
Let
is
him
not
answer.
voting for less government.
Okay.
Yeah,
literally.
that's a damn good point.
How about you guys? you're
Ronald
representing the
Reagan.
Libertarian
Ronald
Party.
Reagan lost their vote. Ronald Reagan won everyone's vote, but he lost the foreign-born
Okay,
vote.
how about this? How about this? What if there was a? What if we could have it? They don't vote. They come here and they work,
They're
but they
just
don't
part
vote.
of the servant class. Yeah, why not? You know what? Why not?
I'm sure many of them would take that deal. Many of them would say, "I would love to
Of
come
course,
here."
they get welfare.
They
We're
don't
not
get
ending-
welfare and they don't vote.
They get welfare and they don't vote.
They don't get welfare. They
so
don't
their
vote.
kids won't go to schools. So if they chop off their hand, they won't go to a hospital.
They pay
so
for
they
the
won't
schools,
drive
they
on the
pay-
roads that we drive
They're going
on.
to pay sales tax.
Oh,
and they're
the
gonna pay,
sales tax that'll do.
This
That'll
is-
cover
Sales tax,
completely
school
all
funding,
their children's
But
debt.
again, there's
The 35,000
we're not
is their cost.
discussing
The
anything
statistics
of how this
are
affects
not in
the
your
people
favor
who
here.
That is
currently live here.
100% of
When
my
you look
favor.
at Texas, second largest state in the country, second largest number of illegal immigrants in the country. And when I say they pay more in taxes than they take,
That is not true
That
at
is
all.
what studies have
You know,
shown.
no, you know why
study after
no,
study has shown this.
no. You know why this is wrong? Because you don't measure by illegal immigrant. You measure by foreign-born household. Because people who generally take from the welfare have an American citizen child. That's how they do it. They get free lunch care. It costs what, $30,000 to send a kid to public school in Texas? Do you think the average illegal is paying $30,000 a year in taxes if they have 3 kids, $100,000 a year? Are you joking me? That is not at all covering even the basics. That is
No,
just a lie.
Texas would collapse economically, wouldn't it?
Because they don't pay it because we have enough wealthy people that keeps the system moving.
Well, and
that's
issue-
why also home price, home
other
taxes.
What's
keep going.
bankrupting the welfare system again is native-born older people who living forever now with good reason. People living longer, younger people who come over who are working are not like taking as much out of the medical
so if it is
costs and all
bankrupting,
that.
why should we
Listen,
be
I would
importing all
also
these
argue
people?
every adult, every
What's
adult
bankrupting
immigrant.
is
We were able to
we-
cut 54% of Medicaid spending in 1 year in Florida by asking if they're illegal or not legal. I'm
First
sure
off, if you're
Social
talking about
Security
welfare-
is going to go bankrupt because we don't have enough people to pay into the system anymore. We have too much. This
Right,
is a
so bring
conservative.
over the poor,
This is not.
they will
I'm not
cover
arguing. We all
everybody.
agree on that. We
Yes,
need.
I'm sure there's millions of
We
Venezuelans that would
need
just
people
do the
to
system.
work to make this. I mean, I would privatize the system and.
And Robbie, I
Let's
also-
let
I would
Chase
argue
go.
this.
Let's let Chase go.
We're talking about the
Okay,
welfare
Chase.
state. We're talking about education. The truth is every working age adult who comes in this country and works never had to go through the socialist education system that costs the taxpayer money, never had to go through all the costs that it comes to raise somebody in this country. They came here, they're ready to work, they're ready to get
The
a job.
average legal
There's
immigrant
no
is
real
47 years
that's
old,
actually
and they
part of my
have their
point.
own children.
Is why
Chase,
are
what
you
talking about?
Yeah, and then
prioritizing
their
those
children
people
grow up
over
in this
our
country
people?
And
as
they go through
citizens.
the same social school. I don't understand.
And they
the
start
point, your
businesses,
story.
they start their own, and they
Yes,
pay their own
everyone
taxes.
starting a
47,
business.
what are the age of their children?
No,
Are they in their 20s? They're working age.
No. Usually they are not as successful as their parents in many cases, and they get family chain migration. That's how they come. They sponsor their siblings. They sponsor their adult parents. That's why it's so old. I mean, that's why also the legal immigrant crime rate is so low, because we have so many middle-aged, average legal immigrants, middle-aged. Average criminals not. And if you were to split it by race, white Americans have the same crime rate as Canada. Black Americans, the top most dangerous places in the entire world, and Hispanics fall somewhere in between.
I
That's
agree on that.
That's the facts of the matter case.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
Well, would you support bringing, for example, higher levels of people from Nigeria? Or I think you even mentioned, one of you mentioned Algeria earlier.
Algeria, yeah.
Well, but Nigeria as well. I mean, Thomas Sowell talks about Nigerian success stories.
Yes, they're super successful because we take so few of them in. Because
That's the reason.
Yes, because we cut the cream. We take the very, very, very excellent, the very best.
It's the vetting that
If
they're
we
actually
took,
kind of talking
because
about.
there were so few Nigerians to start from, they don't have chain migration in the numbers that say Mexicans do.
So there isn't a cultural reason that you're saying it's the vetting because we take hiring
If we took
potential Nigerians.
0.003% of every nation's population based on skills base, instead of let's say 16% of Mexico, we would have huge wealth and more wealth in this country because it's unlimited, because it's unvetted, because it's poor workers, because it's H-1Bs who replace American tech workers. We don't have that. And that's the truth. And because of chain migration, they bring in their second cousin who just wants to get on American welfare rolls, and they do it.
Well, and here's a good question for you guys. Has the years of an H-1B program, for example, actually in ways that it's hard to quantify, it's hard for us to understand, but has it created a job market that has disencouraged American college graduates from seeking those jobs that have for years been occupied by H-1B visa holders? It's not even an option, perhaps, for a lot of people to think of it.
I would argue having more skilled workers, whether they're immigrant or native born, actually creates more economic activity, allows for more business to create, and more jobs get created in the end. And so, no, I don't. I think it increases the overall size of the economic pie. I understand there's competition in the marketplace. That's a good thing. It is good to have competition in the marketplace because the most efficient businesses survive, those who don't fall away. I know we are all in agreement here that we oppose the welfare state. That is a different thing entirely.
Except
than
for
saying-
Ryan Grimm.
Except for Ryan. But other than that, other than Ryan, we all oppose the welfare state. That is an entirely different issue than immigration. If we didn't have a welfare state,
No, it's not. They're intrinsically
if you didn't have a
That's
welfare
not
state,
true.
you would
Murray
still have people
Rothbard thought they were
that
connected.
work. You would still have people coming here for a better
not
life.
true. People-
And people don't just come here only for wealth.
36%,
You really think people are coming here for
36% of
welfare?
our population between ages 18 to 64 are not in the workforce. They're not in school, they're not retired, they're not in the workforce. And that number has been getting lower and lower and lower since the Wall Street, whatever it was, the Wall Street riots, or the hell it was.
The hard hat riots.
No, Wall Street, that happened like in 2007.
Oh, I see what you're talking
Wall
about.
Street,
I see
whatever,
what you're talking
can't-
about. Okay.
You mean Occupy?
Occupy, yeah.
2011.
Since Wall Street, since Occupy Wall Street, that number is getting lower and lower and lower. As much as mass immigration serves as a deterrent for some workers to get into the workforce. That is a complete thing. People don't go into the workforce. There are thousands of Americans who have medical degrees who then don't become doctors. And partly because the hospital system benefits on visa workers. So they literally make it as hard as possible for people with medical degrees to get into the hospital systems. I would say let's tap our own American base full of millions of people not in the workforce and give them some kind of job. Because what's going to happen is with AI, with technology, the number of blue collar, working class, cheap jobs that everyone's is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. As the population of illegal immigrants grows, 1 million a year, mostly of that same pool, millions of Americans without a high school degree or a college degree will be in that pool. And what will they turn to? What will they turn to when they can't get a job? Technology is taking their job. They're going to take to the politics of authoritarianism, whether it be socialism or fascism. Someone will be to blame. The reason Hugo Chavez destroyed one of the most prosperous countries in all the Western Hemisphere, because he said, they are rich because you are poor because they are rich. Come with me and we'll take their golf courses. That's what's going to happen here. As you crunch the entire population of America's working class between AI and mass immigration, you will have tons of people from the third world here and our own people who will be unable to find a job, and they'll turn to politics and not your kind of politics for the solutions.
This is becoming, though, just an argument against any technological
That is
innovation,
not my argument,
any
literally.
any improvements
I can
in
throw a softball
anywhere
and you can miss it.
Just let him finish.
Yeah, you can make the same arguments again for any development that created destroyed some jobs, made that job no longer economically viable for people in this category, and then created other jobs. The government didn't force us to stay in the inefficient mode because that would make no sense. You're coming close to endorsing autarky, which would involve population controls. This argument holds. If you're trying to say that there's this finite amount of resources, and the more people there are, the more we have to spend. That's an argument just against having more people in general.
But
that argument would
that is not
economically illiterate.
No,
because
but what the
people
government did do, the government said
value
you
when they
can't
come in
here
at every
anymore.
level.
In 1924, when we said let's reduce legal immigration all
Let's
the way
reduce
to
let's reduce the
1970,
population of the country
we
by
had the
50%.
highest middle
Let's reduce
class.
it to 10%.
We had the
Let's
highest
have
middle
a
class
country
ever.
of 100 people.
But Robbie,
That's your argument.
you're historically illiterate. We
You're
literally had more
economically
prospect-
illiterate.
No, yes, you
You
are.
failed economics 101.
I
This
did
is the
not.
most basic argument.
Robbie,
I'm just
between
illiterate.
1924 and 1964, was the country more prosperous or less prosperous? Because we had fewer immigrants than we did in the generation
It's not more
beforehand.
prosperous than it is today.
Wait, what years are you talking about?
24 to 64.
You want to live in
We were
1924?
more. 64 with prosperity, with a higher middle class.
Yes, that's where I talk about the
Yes.
economic illiteracy. We are by every definable characteristic better off
Yes,
today than
because the
1960s.
poor have a
The
higher
average
living
house
standard, but the
homes
average-
were smaller on average. People owned fewer cars on average. They had fewer consumer electronics in their house.
Because they
They're more
moved out of
expensive.
poverty recently.
Here, let's let-
Everything they had was worse then.
Including,
Because of technology.
including freedom.
That's what I'm talking about. Technology happens when you allow workforce to come in and work for your companies.
No, we didn't need a new workforce from 20. So no technology happened from 24 to 64. Nothing.
It got better from that period, and it's gotten better since. Because we
Because
have
we
a
had no
robust economy
immigration
that
during
comes
that
in.
period. We had no immigration. You're making my point. We had no immigration from 24. It was extremely limited. It was literally few from Western Europe, which went through a war. You're talking about the most prosperous growth periods in American history, just pure growth, and we had very little immigration. Canada,
Sorry, the marginal
Canada,
tax rate was also at 90%. I don't think that's what created the wealth or the
Canada-
growth of our country.
Canada
but
and the
correlation
UK
is not
no one's-
causation.
no one's
though.
saying-
Canada and
No
the
one said
UK
that.
have had the most robust immigration they've ever had in their history. 40% of all the immigrants who ever came to the UK came in the last 10 years. And they're in a recession, and so is Canada. If immigration created prosperity, literally the most...
It literally does.
No, it doesn't, because Canada is in a
literally does,
recession,
though.
and so is the UK.
Why hasn't it created prosperity in the
It's
country?
created
has-
amazing
it has-
so much
it has-
prosperity.
Are we talking about GDP?
No.
Let's just look
a
at the
handful of
terms.
immigrants from a handful of country, enormously successful.
What are we talking about?
Enormously.
GDP?
That is
What are we
not true
talking
of
about
any
to
other
measure
country.
the prosperity?
How are we measuring prosperity? Prosperity for the multinational corporations or prosperity for the average household?
Where's this hatred of
Prosperity-
capitalism? There's a lot of
Yeah,
disparaging
prosperity
of
for the average
corporations and
American
businesses.
household.
We are
GDP per
popular.
capita
Makes me
has been
uncomfortable. I
stagnant
thought
on
it
and
was
off
among
for-
right-wing people.
We
No,
are the
average
populists.
GDP per capita has been pretty stagnant overall since, I don't know, the 80s where mass
People's
immigration
access,
was.
I'm talking about bigger homes on average for
Adjusted
people,
for
more
inflation,
cars.
adjusted for
Adjusted
inflation,
for inflation,
wages
they're still
have been
doing-
pretty stagnant for over 30 years.
That's true.
When we had mass immigration, the largest numbers ever.
Wages have been stagnant, but what you can purchase
when we had
with those
mass
wages are
immigration,
better.
huge
Can I-
rates of growth when we had
We got a
low
couple
immigration.
stats here just to so 1920 census, which followed an explosion of immigration over the previous 50 years. Those people continued to reproduce. The population of
what people
1920,
were those?
the
Since you're looking at
population,
stats.
the population in 1920 in the United States was 106 million. The population by 1970 was 200 million. The population doubled in this time period where you're saying
Yeah, we
there
had
was no population growth. Or,
No, I didn't say population growth. We had no immigration.
It was
had no-
immigrants who
we
were
had-
fueling that population growth.
No, that's not right. We took an immigration went to.
So immigration was good for 50 years, then good not to have
We
it.
had pauses because we needed to assimilate millions
it's
of
called
people.
measured.
That's what happens. People assimilate people. We took a 50-year pause. I think immigration was about 100 to 150,000 a year over the course of 50 years. That would be how many? 6 million of that 100 million? No, there's something called the baby boom. The average person, the average family had 3.5 children. That's what it did. The Catholics, I think, had 4 or 5 children at the time. That's what the growth was. It was American growth,
I'm
not
just trying
immigrant
to
growth.
follow.
I know
So-
you're
so
very
you were
unusual
good,
to
so you
that,
were
but
good
that's
with,
what's
so you were
American
good
growth.
with
But I agree
immigration
on
then?
the cultural assimilation. Like in theory, I agree that we need to take those things. I just don't agree on the economic stuff at all, guys.
Okay.
I
So
don't.
what else do you
but,
have?
but the culture again, the people we're taking
And
in, where I
as soon
disagree
as
with you,
find
I think are
Somalians
beneficial
and
to our culture
Ethiopians and
because they're
Mexicans who
more.
make billion-dollar businesses, I would agree with you, and don't take any welfare. But that's not the case.
What else did you have, Ryan?
Nothing.
No. Okay, great. Well, as we're moving into the second hour here, I mean, this was heavy on
Oh God,
economics.
what? Wait, there's another hour? Oh no.
There's another hour.
Are you serious?
Or not. I think we solved it, right?
Yeah,
What do you
I think we're all good. But what I was going to say is, we talked heavily about economics. We touched a bit on crime in the beginning. But let's talk right now, just as we're wrapping up the sort of economic portion, and then we'll move on to crime, humanitarian concerns. What do you guys think? I'll start with you guys over here. Is the one economic thing that these guys are missing, and then I'll give these guys an opportunity to say what the one economic thing you guys are missing is, the one thing that you don't understand or you're not factoring into your argument.
I mean, they claim foreign-born households produce more than they take. That is completely not true. You could look at Stephen Camarada's numbers on this. You could look at a bunch of other people who've sat there and done this. It is completely inverse between education, school lunches, jails, hospitals, Medicaid fraud, the series of other frauds. If they cash assistance programs, they take an enormous. It is a net negative overall. And the fact that they don't take welfare is a total lie.
Go ahead, Jack.
Okay, well, do you want them to respond or?
No, you go first.
All right. Yeah, I mean, for me, I'll just say it again, and I've been saying it over and over, and it feels like I'm one of the only people here who is even mentioning this, that the economic effect that it has on the people who are currently here, that it puts, I mean, Chase, you're going to go on this campaign, and I'm sure you've been to many states already, but you're going to go to the Midwest and the South and these economically depressed areas and say, guess what? The way out of this is more immigration, to bring more people into these areas. Go up to Minnesota that has already seen a massive influx of Somalians and say, guess what? We're going to have more of that, and that's going to help you. I mean, I don't know if that's good politics, buddy, because I don't think that's something that those people want to hear.
All right, you guys each.
So I've actually traveled the campaign trail. I've spoken to a lot of people about immigration. One of the things I hear most is that the process itself is broken. It needs to be simplified and fixed, so more people can come here legally to work. I talk to business owners in El Paso who say, I would love to hire some of these people who are here living in shelters right now, but they have no legal status to work. I live within the 100-mile border patrol zone. So if I hire them, they can literally burst in the door, ask for papers, and take people right out. And so, yes, I talk to people who understand that immigrants do create wealth in this country. They do create prosperity for themselves and for other people. They allow businesses to hire people, yes. And I understand.
You do know that not only business owners vote, right?
No, and I understand that, no, but not all business owners vote, but so do their employees, so do their consumers, so do other people who are involved in creating economic wealth in this country. All right, I understand you mentioned the working class, the blue-collar folks out there who have to compete for jobs. They have to right now compete for jobs in a broken system where immigrants come through into the shadows and can undercut wages. Let immigrants come here and compete one-on-one for an equal wage and see who does the best work. The best work should get hired. That's the way the market should work,
So you
but
support
it
the
doesn't
minimum
today.
wage?
No, I don't support a minimum wage.
Okay.
I support the wages that the market would bear. I support the work that the market would bear. That's how we actually have true competition. What we have right now is a one-sided argument where people can come here in the shadows, they work, for far less than they probably should because they're allowed to be exploited because someone can say, if you don't work for the wage I give you, we'll just get you deported anyway.
So amnesty.
All right, so Suave, what's the one thing they're missing?
So much of the problems in our country are created by government artificially creating shortages. It is particularly pronounced in the housing sector. We can't build things in this country anymore. I mean, so many Republicans and Democrats want to bring back factory jobs and factories. You can't get through the red tape required to do it. There is too much restriction on all of these things, on building things in this country. We can't do it anymore. And one of those reasons is a restriction on the labor pool. I want this to be a great country. It would be like artificially saying, oh, we have too much lumber, too much steel. We don't want any more. We can't have any more of that come in. It's going to suck up resources or something. It is itself a resource, these things. And that is true of labor. We need to be a great country that builds things again, and the government is killing us at it. Immigration is part of it.
All right, so as we're beginning again the second hour here, we've talked a lot about economics. We're going to talk now about national security and humanitarian concerns. We do have a clip to set this up. This is an interview that was taken just at the border recently. We'll roll the clip right now.
By the way, if you are smart enough, you will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're gonna know who I am. Very easy.
Wow, very easy. The entitlement.
No, believe me, I'm much better than that.
The entitlement, guys. Wow.
We'll see soon.
Okay, so you heard soon you'll know who I am. Now, I think one of the big questions for you guys, you addressed this a little bit at the beginning, is that, listen, the native-born Americans have higher crime rates, et cetera. Is it feasible to have relatively open borders and prevent situations like this from occurring? And if it is, what should Joe Biden do right now, today, tomorrow? Chase.
I would argue that if you had ease of legal immigration, you could actually put our eye on the ball for those who are coming here to do harm, to actually, like I said, traffic people for labor or sexual exploitation. people who are going to be basically frauding people by putting fentanyl into things that look like they're not fentanyl and causing overdoses. Yeah, those are where we need to be putting our eye on the ball with law enforcement. Those are actually seeking to do real harm in our communities. And when we allow for the mass majority of immigrants who just want to come here and work and live and not create crime and not be violent, we can actually focus on the crime that happens on our southern border. We can better put our eye on the ball where it needs to be, as opposed to not being able to see the forest from the trees.
Response?
I'm not sure. So which agency would do that?
That would be a border patrol. Yeah, not ICE. But yeah, also, you're not going to get me to say that Border Patrol is a wonderfully run organization or that there's not major problems with it.
What's wrong with that?
Huh?
What's wrong with that?
So what's wrong?
It's about every law enforcement agency in this country has major problems with it. For one, every law enforcement in this country doesn't allow for real civil adjudication when they've done wrong through qualified immunity. Law enforcement, by and large, ICE themselves are a badly run organization. They use billions of dollars of
Because they don't deport enough illegals.
Huh?
Because they don't deport enough illegals.
They don't do. Well, here's the thing: you can't deport all of them. You just can't.
You 100% can.
Yeah, but not without a huge economic
Angola
cost.
deported all the illegal Congolese.
Not without
in
a
their
huge
country.
economic cost, a huge cost to our privacy and security, and a huge cost to our economy. Like those
Yes,
are.
you can. That is a lie.
Okay, so Ryan,
They
go ahead.
literally
can. It would
there
just
are
make the Patriot
1.7
Act look like,
This is the question.
look like a
This is-
wristband
Right,
down for a
so
carnival, but
Ryan,
fine.
how do
The
you do
Patriot
it
Act doesn't
without
apply to
making
them.
the
So first
Patriot
of all-
Act look like a
so
ride at a
first you do
carnival?
expedited removal. That's first thing, which neither President Trump nor President Biden did. Just expedited removal.
Detention.
Expedited removal from the border, first of all, from the outside.
But
That's-
detention as you're processing for removal.
Well, they got to go somewhere
Yeah.
while they're getting deported.
Well, yeah, that's a bit.
Yeah.
That was the kids in cages.
Expedite. Yeah, sure.
Yes.
That was part of it, but that was also yes and no. Expedited removal currently happens all the time, but it's not expanded. You expand expedited removal. There's 1.7 million illegal aliens from Mexico and Central America alone, not including Europe, Africa, Asia, all the rest of places, that have had their adjudication process and are still in this country. 1.7 million, so almost 10% of that 20 million number have had the whole process you're talking about, and they stayed. And only ICE and a president who could sit there and do expedited removal and actually catch up to them will deport them. But over the border, over the week, there was 8 ISIS members from Tajikistan who came across the border, had been here for, I think, a month, 6 weeks, something like that, and perfectly let them in. They lied to the border agents, and they completely, and then afterwards they said, this is a big flag in our system, and they managed to find them in under a week. They managed to find these people who lived in different cities in under a week. I'm pretty sure that we could sit there and do that. I'm pretty sure that we could sit there and find illegals. First of all, you cut the welfare dependency off. You sit there and stop giving them Medicaid. You sit there and make it. You do what Jan Brewer did in Arizona in SB 1070. You also allow local law enforcement to sit there and turn the ICE.
Explain SB 1070.
Yeah, and also with the
It was struck down
context
by
that the
the
Supreme
Supreme
Court
Court.
It was
struck it
not
down.
actually. Only one portion of it was, but the portion that was the papers, please, was allowed by the Supreme Court.
Go on.
But SB 1070, the Supreme Court has ruled that states cannot on their own deport illegal aliens, but they have never said that state and local police cannot help ICE sit there and find them and then ICE deports them. You just sit there and weaponize it across all 50 states. That's one thing. Second thing is you manage to cut off the welfare system. You go through expedited removal to find the 1.7 million who've already been through this wonderful system that everyone says is going to find the deterrents, and you deport them immediately. Then, through how you stop the process ultimately after expedited removal is you look at increasing the fear threshold for asylum seekers. Asylum is not actually as high as people play as the media is pretending like 80% are asylum seekers. Most are not. They're just regular illegals. You increase the fear threshold and you do remain in Mexico and you build a wall, a real wall like the one Israel has. Not to offend you, Ryan. The real one that Ryan.
That one worked.
Yeah, the one that works.
All right.
Let's say I'm the government and I have obtained $1 trillion more to do something with. You guys think it would be best spent rounding up every illegal in the country? I actually think I would
That's not
put
what he
those
just said.
resources
Let him go,
towards
let him go, let him go.
I
He's just
think
gonna
we have
lie.
a
He's
lot
just
to
gonna
say.
lie.
But you'll get plenty of time
Ryan
to respond.
rambles it in his head
But
and
you'll
comes
get
out
time
with
to
a completely
respond.
different
He's just going to lie
question.
You'll
then,
get
and
time to respond.
mischaracterize what Ryan
My
just said.
understanding is that
respond.
it would cost about $1 trillion
Who told
to
you that?
deport.
Well, are you going to respond
That
to
is the
Ryan, or are you
commonly
just going to keep
cited-
making up things?
How much
do you
is the
think it-
number
how
by
I'm going to sit
Cato?
here quietly.
How much do you think it costs to get those 6 to Tajiks?
Less than $1 trillion.
Okay, how much?
So
Probably,
'Cause
we can pull a
it cost-
calculator out.
It was
Yeah.
probably about a week and a half worth of, I don't know, 25 ICE agents to find 6 unique people.
My point was going to be
Yeah.
It's
that
$1 trillion
this
pretty quickly.
vast effort to arrest, detain, and deport 20 million people if we had the resources and the money to do it, I would rather spend it on arresting the violent criminals in the society, regardless of whether they are illegal immigrants or not. We have a massive crime clearance problem in this city, in cities all around the country, of police not being able to arrest enough people, of crime labs being backlogged, of people not being prosecuted.
Robbie, you would oppose that? You would oppose that in a minute.
I'm saying I don't. I want to do it.
Ryan, let me point out. Ryan,
let's do it right now.
One second. Let me point something out.
Let's do it.
You said you can do both.
Yes.
Resources are not unlimited.
Oh, really? Because apparently the welfare state is boundless.
Donald Trump
bringing a whole world's poor.
Donald Trump wanted to hire how many?
Resources are limited.
First off,
Donald
you're not
Trump
arguing with a Democrat. Nobody here agrees that the welfare state is good.
Well,
we recognize
you've been saying it's unlimited all night long.
That is a drain on resources.
Go
We
ahead.
all recognize that. But so is spending $1 trillion, whether you do it for rounding people up and deporting them or anything else.
$1 trillion never save a lot of money.
Donald Trump tried to hire how many Border Patrol agents? 5,000, 10,000.
You're talking about the Senate bill?
Yeah, Donald Trump said, I'm gonna surge resources to the border.
Oh, right.
Guess what? They couldn't find the workers to do it. So now police forces are facing labor shortages everywhere. And now you're saying that not only can you round up every single
defund the police?
That was because of defund the police.
Happy to answer your question. Happy to answer your question.
And
because
you're also going to then go after everybody with a warrant in the entire country?
Perfectly.
But you can't even hire Border Patrol agents.
Not someone in front of my CBS yesterday, regardless of whether they were an illegal immigrant or not. That's what I want.
Jack's going to go, right?
So I know Chase has been, he's been pretty anti-war, right? Generally anti-war guy, and we'll just leave it at that without detail. So, when we're pulling back our special forces, when we're pulling back those guys, when we're reducing those ranks, if in any way, and if they are willing to be detailed out to deal with any of these problems, the transnational cartels, as we're talking about, as Robbie's talking about, in terms of the most violent ones here, as you've said.
American troops are going to do the policing in our country now? Awesome.
Of course.
This is a great
against
vision
transnational threats. Who should deal with that? What do you think? What do you think other countries use, Ryan?
Unleash the military domestically.
What do you think what other countries? You just said ISIS-K.
Who
is ISIS-K not a transnational threat?
It's better for us to ignore the cartel as hundreds of thousands of Americans die from fentanyl overdoses. But we just shouldn't. We shouldn't deal with it. That should be. We should always be on defense. Once they're in the communities, then take care of them.
So abolish ICE. No, that's a serious question for all of you.
ICE sucks. ICE is a toxic, disgusting.
I am fine with border enforcement. I am fine with having borders. If experts say we need to spend more resources on this aspect, I don't have any ideological stake in that. But I don't want to spend resources rounding up people who are not committing crimes or danger and just participating in the economic activity of the country. We can have still border security. In fact, I think we can make border security more efficient and easier if we didn't have people streaming across the border because there's no other way to get in the country.
They're taking $1 million a year. What are you talking about? We take in more than any country in the world. There is not a fence around the oceans. We take in so many people. It's not like they can't come in another way. That's a lie, Robbie. You're saying a lie repeatedly. It doesn't make it true. You need to know that.
It's
also, the whole thing, it is not extremely because
yes,
so many come. Only because they all want to come. That's the only reason it's competitive. That's why you want the cream, the best, not the poorest in the world.
0.3%.
Yes, 0.003%. That would be wonderful. You get only the wealthiest, the best.
So should we have any asylum open? You just said not the poorest in the world. Often asylum seekers would be the poorest in the world. Legitimate asylum seekers.
Yes, there's probably like 5 in the world, and they all live in South Africa. There's not many.
Why is it that asylum seekers don't come to the first safe country?
Yes, they don't.
No, I don't disagree with that.
They don't. They country shop.
Many of our asylum seekers are not from.
And everyone.
So remain in Mexico? Would both of you support remain in Mexico?
I support whatever can facilitate easier immigration. If that means someone has to stay in Mexico while their asylum is adjudicated, I personally think far too many people claim asylum. I think if we had far less people claiming asylum, we wouldn't have to have that. We would have an easier path to be able to move people through asylum courts here in the United States. But I'm for whatever eases immigration. I don't necessarily think remaining in Mexico makes it easier to process an asylum claim. But if someone wants to claim asylum before they get here, they should be able to do that.
I don't think it makes any sense to be in the country without the ability to legally work. That's
what work. Asylum seekers work. What are you talking about? They have to wait 90 days. They get a work permit. What are you talking about? They do work.
They fear deportation.
They do not fear. They all work. They come from Venezuela. They go to New York. They become drivers, or not drivers, but like motorcycle drivers for food delivery.
There are thousands of deportations a year.
Yes, there are, but that's not asylum seekers unless they commit a crime
Right.
or
Yeah,
afterwards.
that's
but
true.
they do work. It's not like they don't work. This is once again, Robbie, this is just not true.
Wait, you just said they come here and get welfare.
Most of them do. Yes, you get cash
Well, then they're not
assistance.
working.
No, of course they work in the
Oh, they
cash
work and
assistance.
get welfare.
In New York City, you are qualified. In New York City, where home of immigrant, Ellis Island, all the rest of it, you absolutely qualify for welfare. As an illegal immigrant, as a refugee, you get free housing. How much does a house cost for a month? Rob, wouldn't you love a free hotel in New York for a month, do whatever you want with? And you get cash assistance benefits and free food.
These are all arguments to end the welfare state.
Okay.
That's fine.
How do you, as the libertarian president, end the welfare state of New York City?
Yeah, well, you don't do that as a libertarian candidate for president. You do that as running city council for mayor in New York.
No,
you start removing these programs.
So the only way you do it for illegal immigrants is you stop illegal immigrants. That's the way you do it. You can't sit there and govern.
I don't want to just stop the welfare state just for immigrants. I
You
want to
I
end
get
the
it.
welfare
I
state.
agree with you. I agree with you. But if you can't do it as president for like all these municipalities that have a huge welfare state for basically everyone besides the ones who pay taxes, then you can't do it. Then what are you going to do as president? You're going to have a welfare state. That's the state of it. You're declaring defeat of your own argument. The only thing you could stop is the illegal immigrants. So stop them.
No, you have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. You have to be able to allow
So
the
I
markets
asked
to
you
work
how.
react. You have to allow for a free market to react while you also advocate for an end to the welfare state.
How?
Because I'm
How?
doing
I'm
that
asking
right
you
now as a
how.
candidate. There are people all over the country who advocate for more open immigration who
Chase,
also
I'm
oppose
asking
welfare.
you, how will you stop the welfare
Yeah,
state?
you do that through legislation, through Congress, through actually ending these programs, through
Okay.
creating a
That's a
sundown
little-
for Social
Can't
Security.
wait for 3
We're
years.
getting
That's a
into a
little
whole other
terrible.
tangent here.
Yeah, let me-
But
And
the
by the way,
thing is
most
that
Americans
a
do
lot of
support
your
the
arguments
welfare
against
state.
immigration is arguments against the welfare state as it
No, I've
exists.
got tons of
There are
arguments.
no welfare
Look,
states.
ending the
just
welfare
scratched
state is very
that.
difficult. So is deporting 20 million people
No,
and
it's
closing
not.
the southern border.
But
Yes, it
which
is
one-
difficult.
because which one is
Throwing
politically
more
acceptable?
government money has not
Which
made
one do
anything
people
better in this
actually want?
country.
Oh,
Well, let's
really?
spend more money
Really?
on it.
Chile
Let's
is a
spend
much
more
smaller
money on it.
country.
Entire industrial Southwest that the U.S. government built. The U.S. government built the
Spending more
Southwest.
money,
That didn't
government
do
money
anything.
would fix the
There's
problem.
no
We would have the
industry
highest
anywhere.
math and reading
Really,
scores
there's
in
no
decades.
NASA program.
We
NASA
have
never did anything.
zero
The creation of the
enrollment.
internet that never did
Okay.
anything.
Here's
Really.
the deal. Adding a
That was
cost,
all the
whether
government.
it's
Yes, the
a
internet was
billion or
because of the
trillion-
government. That is actually true, Robbie.
Yeah, but when you add costs to our
Ryan,
economy,
you
whether
want
it's
to jump in on
trillion-
that?
Okay, let
Wait,
me
I
ask
was-
you guys. Let me ask you guys something else. You guys are both Trump supporters, right? In general, is that
Right.
fair to
Yeah.
say? Ish. We'll see. Anyhow,
Well, Ryan didn't support Trump in the primary. I did, so.
I supported him in 16. When he said
Okay.
Mexicans are rapists, I was like, he's my guy.
oh, great. Okay,
ahead, Ryan.
interesting. All right, so there was just a coup in Bolivia.
Yeah,
A military coup attempt. We'll find out whether or not there was some U.S. support for that or not in the coming hours and days. During the Trump administration, I'm not singling him out because Biden has been awful on this, Obama's been awful on this, but during the Trump administration, there was another coup in Bolivia, there was an attempted coup in Venezuela, Cuba was thrown on the state sponsor of terror list. We backed a narco government in Honduras that was a result of a coup during Hillary Clinton's time. We helped elect this guy in Ecuador that took the country from the safest country in South America to the most dangerous and linked it up with narcos. As a result of all of this, you're seeing massive outflows of people to our southern border.
Right.
Where does this play into your guys' thinking about immigration? Should we stop doing that?
I think
Yeah.
we shouldn't invade the world, and we shouldn't invite the world.
You're not going to find a lot of
Yeah,
deep
and we're
support
not.
over
No,
here.
I'm
Okay.
not for overthrowing
Yeah.
governments. But also, I mean, in a number of countries, you could say, I mean, El Salvador is super safe right now. Super safe. People cross through it all the time. They don't declare asylum there. They wait till they get to the United States. There are multiple safe countries that they go through. Chile is a relatively
Because, by
safe
the way,
country.
of the welfare state.
Because they don't have welfare like we do, and they don't have the migrant stuff that like we do, and they know that Joe Biden opened the doors. I'm totally opposed to it. I think that it does feed into a lot of problems and instability, and creating I know you're going to hate this, but creating like a Monroe Doctrine of the Western Hemisphere, where we say we're going to create governance to sit there and support good leaders. And unfortunately, we have leaders like Hillary Clinton who say, you know what, let's overthrow Gaddafi, which led to a migration crisis in Europe. Yes, we're not sending our own best to the White House.
Yeah, you're not going to get a lot of disagreement on these points
Yeah.
from this side of the table. This is
But
what I like about
I'll even
populism.
point out
I
that
agree
this is
with all
one,
of
this is
that.
one of the specific things when Marco Rubio's name came up as vice president that I loudly came out against
there we go.
that his involvement in the Juan Guaido, whatever you want to call it, was something that's just I mean, that's just a stain you're never going to be able to get away.
Right.
And who knows when the next one that he's going to come up with is, and people have told me, oh, Jack, Rubio he's changed his colors on that, and he's seen the light, and I just don't buy it.
But that's also why we should not take in the failed warlords of the third world, which
Even
is what
if
we do
we
now.
back them and create them.
Like
We saw
no,
Ilhan
but we
Omar's
didn't back
family got
Ilhan
here.
Omar's family, and we still took them in after.
Well,
did,
but he's
actually.
talking about. Well,
No,
go ahead.
we
Go ahead.
quite literally did.
We
Like
backed
her-
Ilhan
her-
Omar's warlord family.
Explain it.
Yeah, her father
was
was
a
part of
warlord.
the Somali faction that we were supporting.
But weren't we supporting multiple factions in Somalia, and hers just one failed?
No, but, I mean,
We do
well, I mean,
usually,
sure, we were supporting
we usually
multiple
support
factions, but-
both sides of every war.
We support both sides
We
of
support
nearly
both
every
sides of every
conflict all the
war.
time. That's
I think we
look
support
up
both.
the US
look up her dad.
war.
We
Okay,
were-
but we should.
yeah.
But that is our current state. We literally supported Al Qaeda in Syria, but not in Afghanistan. But we've done this a million times over. No, we shouldn't be propping up and funding these wars and regime wars. But we shouldn't be taking in the failed warlords that we've overthrown from both sides.
I think a lot of the people who come here are people who are escaping the warlords from those areas of the world, who don't want to live under their under their autocracy, their violence, and they're coming here because they see a better situation for them and their family.
And they vote for Democrats.
They will vote for whoever they vote for. They vote for whoever
They
can
vote
market
for
to them the
Democrats.
best.
But
They're not voting for you,
It does
That's
seem,
neither here nor
to
there.
Robbie's point, it does seem a little pitiful to say you don't like them because they don't vote for you, rather than, to Robbie's point, just go out and make a case.
No,
They're trending towards Trump. Trump is out there
What
trying
is
to
happening?
get them.
They're very
They're out
careful.
there.
They hate wokeness.
What is-
They hate
they
it.
hate
I'm
it,
with the
yeah.
people who hate wokeness.
That is not what happened. There's two reasons that Trump is winning over more Hispanics than before. One is BLM. This is the reason that Nixon actually performed the best among Republicans that performed the best among Hispanics was Nixon, because Nixon told Hispanic voters, "I will save you from black criminals." After the 1968 riots,
Sure.
and that appealed to
speaks
them.
to the point I was making about who's committing all the crimes. Actually,
Exactly. I
in our
mean, it
cities.
is. It's 53 or 56% of murders for a 13% population. If you do it just by men, it's like 6% to 56%.
We actually don't even know the number now because they don't report.
Right. So, but yes. So the two things happening: one, BLM and crime rates, and Democrats lost their minds with having to protect black criminals. The second thing that happened was that as Mexicans, Cubans, and Puerto Ricans, the three longest ancestral Hispanic communities within this country, have now been in here 80, 90 years, conservative Hispanics are now voting like conservative white people, which they never did before. Conservative Hispanics usually voted for Democrats. Now they are voting for Republicans. That is the huge spike in Trump numbers. They don't care about an amnesty. Trump is not talking about amnesties. They didn't care when John McCain was offering amnesties. They certainly didn't care when Bush tried to do it afterwards. Ronald Reagan did the amnesty in '86. He got less support in '84 among Hispanics than he got in '80. George H.W. Bush got less support in '88. H.W. did another amnesty in '90. He got less support in '92. It's literally never happened. You could be as amnesty, immigration friendly, and they do not care. All that's changing now is opinions on crime.
Here's a super contemporary example, Haiti. So plenty of reporting, New York Post, Todd Bensman wrote this story here, is fantastic on some of this reporting, what happened in Haiti. We actually talked to the former U.S. Special Envoy on Breaking Points, Daniel Foote, who said that Biden administration struck a deal with the replacement for the slain Haitian president after he was assassinated, that we would back him if he agreed to continue accepting migrants to Port-au-Prince that were being deported in that Haitian flood. Everyone remembers those images from the Del Rio sector from that time period. So, do we, if we're backing a brutal administration, have any responsibility then? We could go down the line to the other coups that we all are not in support of, bold stance, anti-coup. But do we have any, if we all agree that that stuff is wrong, do we have any responsibility to help people who are fleeing violence that is being facilitated by this new regime that the U.S. backed?
No, what we should
Yes,
do.
to remain in Mexico.
That's a serious question.
What's wrong with remaining in Mexico? Then?
But
when it comes to responsibility and duty, we have a responsibility and duty to the people who live in this country now currently. We don't have any responsibility and duty to people around the world. Yes, there are horrible things that the U.S. government has done, and it would be great. It would be wonderful to mitigate those things, but not at the detriment of the people who currently live here. It's what we should import all of Haiti just because of this horrible thing that the CIA did over there. It's ridiculous. It would be insane. And you know that the same level of gang violence would be imported to the United States because there'd be no actual vetting. And no matter how many people say, oh, we're going to vet, it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. There are certain situations like ISIS-K which for a variety of reasons, the IC has a certain targeting for, but things like that, like gang violence, no, of course not. We'd be importing that into our cities. We're already seeing that in Minnesota. We're already seeing that in places across the country. And so there's no question that you have to always put the interest of the people who live here currently first.
Yeah, but if you look at statistics, if you say that both legal and illegal immigrants do commit a lower rate of crime than native-born people, which they do, they do. In many studies, you can find it over and over again.
I can cite the studies right now, they don't.
But you're talking about a duty. You're talking about a responsibility.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is when you increase the number of population with people who commit less crime, you're actually lowering the overall crime rate.
So Chase, why don't you then just make Haiti a state? Make it 51st
So
state.
you're
They're going to drop the crime rate because the minute that they're there, and they would love to be part of the country. Oh, they would absolutely love it. That'd be perfect. So why not? They'll apparently their crime will drop.
You guys should stand up for the libertarian paradise that is Haiti. Right?
Yeah, well,
yeah, actually,
yeah. You're no government.
No government.
Yeah, go to Libya.
Yeah.
Libya loves libertarianism. They don't have government at all.
Look, I actually
They got
agree
tons of
with
cheap labor.
what
They're
Jack
called
was saying a
slaves.
minute ago, that the U.S. government's primary responsibility is not to people elsewhere in the world, but to the citizens of the country. I do agree with that. But if you think of the people who live in this country that the U.S. government does have a duty for, want to hire immigrants, want to rent their apartments to immigrants. They want it. Right. So the responsibility of the U.S. government is to those people who want to work with immigrants, who want immigrants to be their neighbors, who want to engage in commerce with the immigrants. And the position you're taking is that the U.S. government should come in and say a voluntary interaction between people should be morally prohibited by us, the government. I'm saying no. I'm saying that it's harmful and that it's not.
When I say American people, you hear business owners, business owners, business owners. What about all the other people who are here?
Yeah, they work for businesses. They work for businesses, many of whom are created by immigrants. They work alongside immigrants in the workforce.
And do they
today.
want mass immigration?
I think many people are just happy to live in a nation that has been built by immigration.
I'm rejecting your right as the U.S. government broadly to say,
by the way, if one
these
person
people
doesn't
cannot
want
engage in a transaction that I don't approve.
Yeah, if one person doesn't want,
that's literally the
What
point
if
of law.
if one
61%
person
of
doesn't want to
population
enter
wants to
into a
reduce legal
transaction
immigration?
and another person does, that's the marketplace in action. People can decide whether they want to hire immigrants or not, whether they want to work with immigrants or not, whether they want to work for a business that's created by an immigrant or not. But the truth is that when people come here and they are able to exercise their economic output, they do better here than they would at home, and they can create businesses here in the United States.
Here's a clarifying question maybe for them. This is because I'm actually really curious. I think this is something that's very hard to deal with. If we create more lenient immigration laws, because one thing we've seen is as leniency has increased over the course of the Biden administration, there has been a massive surge, and the leniency has basically been a handout to cartels, who have said we are now trafficking basically every single person. You go to the border and you talk to people, everyone has paid. That is a direct quote from somebody that I talked to at a refugee organization in Matamoros. Everyone has paid. So it's a subsidy to cartels in that sense, more lenient immigration laws. Is there a way? Is it possible, and I'll start with you, Chase, is it possible to have more lenient pathways to immigrate to the United States without, in the current situation, giving away all kinds of opportunities for cartels to traffic people, get them up to the border where they can then take advantage of those legal pathways from Colombia or Venezuela or wherever else?
Okay, so first off, if we had an ease to immigration, we had more legal immigration, you wouldn't have people needing to sneak people across the border, coyotes. You wouldn't have the need for that because people could come through a port of entry and declare who they were. You would actually remove profit motive for doing that. Now,
but to
is
get
there profit
through the other countries?
Now that is, and that can be a service that anybody provides to anybody. You know, if I want to travel to the southern tip of Mexico, I can hire a driver or hire people to travel me down there. That's just a service that people are paying for. The illegality is when then you use people to cross through the border illegally. That is something that, you're right, happens a lot. That is actually indicative of the fact that the border is not completely open. The fact is yes, it's porous, people can get through, but there's not an ease of process for people to come here.
So does it have to be completely open?
Exercise coyotes.
Wait, Chase, I have a question. So you just said, but you've been saying this whole time, as long as a company wants to sponsor a worker, then they should come here.
No, as long as a worker wants to come to work. A company, you don't need a sponsorship program. That's a whole centrally planned
Okay. Let's say someone does.
apparatus.
Let's just say someone does want to come to work. Let's say they want nefarious things. They will turn to an illegal method to get across the border anyway.
But
that's like saying the mafia ended when alcohol became legal. That's not true. That's like not true at all. They just moved to a different illegal means.
they'll just traffic another illegal thing.
So, but
or,
Chase,
or
is
worse
that,
people.
is that an argument in support of a completely open border? That's the phrase that you just used. Do we need to have a completely open border in order to prevent human trafficking?
What I think you need to have is you need to have an open port of entry where people who are peaceful can come through it and get to work.
Does
the
that create
marketplace
incentives for more and more people
I mean, let's
to
flip this
flood
on
the
this head,
border?
though. Let's put even more money into border security and enforce it even more vigorously. You could make the argument that that's going to make the cartels even more powerful because their profit incentive to help get people through increases, as it does under prohibition,
it's
right?
made
There's a
harder.
straightforward
So when something
argument
is made
that's
harder,
making
it's
it
more
harder is
expensive.
exactly what they
After-
want.
Before prohibition, less people drank alcohol, and what we have said, what Jack has said, what I have said is that we should be using our military to squash the cartel, which apparently is like a heinous idea. But we should
You guys wanna
protect
bomb the
Americans.
cartels?
Sure.
100%.
So you would
What do
bomb
you say
south
to
of the
that?
border, you'd bomb in Mexico.
100%. If
Oh,
they are
yeah.
a cartel hub making fentanyl, producing fentanyl from China,
Without
smithereens.
Mexico's consent, you would just bomb. And
Mexico is a failed cartel state.
So are you
When
going
are
to
they
coup
go- and also,
AMLO?
what?
Are you going to coup AMLO?
No,
He's already.
Are you
I
guys,
know, but I'm saying hypothetically, like, is,
No.
we
He's
just
still
said
there.
no
I'm
coups.
reluctant to
Are
start
you
a
guys?
war with
I'm just
Mexico.
curious.
I am
Are you
too.
guys
They're
in
one of our
a?
largest trading partners. That
Is this
would be
a normal?
huge wrong.
We're
Is this
not
a normal
bombing
view?
We're not bombing Mexico City. Most of the drugs come from literally one region of Mexico, and they come from certain places. It's not like we don't know where these people are. We managed to get freaking Osama. We managed to sit there and get.
Yes,
that
while
was just run
displacing
against
millions of people
ISIS-K.
and killing.
We don't have
tons
to
and
do all
tons
that
of
because we're
people.
not
We're not
invading a
talking
country.
about the global war on terror. We're talking about those specific types of operations
We
to
literally
go after the
execute
cartels
terrorists all the time.
Yeah, you don't exercise military action in another sovereign nation without their permission.
How
That is an
many-
invasion.
how
That
many-
is war.
how many
And I don't want to go to
Americans-
war with Mexico.
How many Americans have to
Mexico's
die
not
from the
going to
Mexican
declare
drug cartel
war
before
on
it is a
America
war?
if we take
So,
out the cartels.
Jack-
How
That's
many Americans
ridiculous.
have to die before it actually is a war? Because it
First
is a
off-
war, only one side's fighting.
First
let's-
off, wars should be congressionally declared. I don't think you'll ever get both houses of Congress.
They already
agreeing
gave
to
Congress,
invade
they already gave the
Mexico.
presidency the
Let's get
discretion
Jack
to do
to
that.
flesh
So,
out his
done deal.
position on bombing the cartels, because this is a big issue for you, Jack, and it's one that you've given a lot of thought to. Why is it a just war for us, the United States, to start bombing cartels?
Well, first of all, we're not the ones we're not the ones starting the war. The war's already begun. Ryan just mentioned this. You can look at fentanyl deaths. You can look at child trafficking deaths. You can look at some of the ones that I mentioned earlier. The war is here. The war's already on our shores. And by the way, when you talk about the border as it currently exists, the dotted line on the graph, when you talk to a border patrol, when you talk to Homeland Security guys, people I serve with in the military, that they'll tell you that that's the official border, but the real border is far north of that because of the cartel-controlled areas that are already in our country, by the way. So you're talking about specific, and by the way, when I'm talking about bombing, I'm talking about like the Ukrainian-level cruise missile type attacks that we're seeing in Ukraine war. What I'm talking about are targeted operations against cartel leaders, targeted operations against cartel cells, targeted operations against you name it in terms of their hubs of drug facilitation facilities, these types of things. You can do that very, very easy. In fact, by the way, we have a highly trained military to do so.
You can do that while adding more and more to the debt and deficit, and more, just like $1 trillion being.
So just let the cartels keep going. Just let them keep going.
No, but we can just do this by adding more and more and more, and we'll just add more to the deficit. We'll add more to the deficit. We'll add $1 trillion to the
You
deficit.
hate the
to
drug
deport
war.
people.
Guess what?
I
It's a
said
lot
earlier,
cheaper when
I
you
said
stop it
earlier
there than when you
that
stop
I would
it here.
unplug. By the way,
way
all
you
those
save
other
money-
wars.
you save
The way
probably
you stop
way
the
more
drug war
money
is you
by
decriminalize drugs in this country, removing
It
the
worked
profit
really great in
incentive for
Oregon. They had to
black market.
recriminalize them almost immediately.
Where do we get our drugs if you bomb all the cartels? People are gonna still do drugs.
Presumably
No,
your
they're
backyard.
not.
Oh, we're gonna
People
stop
did
people
not
from
drink.
where?
People did
From
not
where?
drink that much.
Where are they gonna get
People
them
drank
from?
much more often after prohibition than before it.
This is something.
So you're
Still
worried
during
about
Prohibition.
now
And
we've
it
gone.
created
less.
So let me get this straight.
Yes,
We've
but
gone from
at
the
a
interests
higher
of the
price,
business
and it created
owners
an entire
to the
criminal
interests of the illegals to now we're on the interest of the druggies. I'm still waiting to hear anyone talk about the interests of the American people.
Yeah, the interest of the American people
It's
is to
all
have an
time
immigration
fentanyl.
system that works, that isn't broken. And when you end the war on drugs, you actually have a situation that has a better situation for those who are using, better situations for communities that without the cartel violence. You have safer use. Yes, that is a better thing for the American people. So is having
Safer use, so
immigration-
like
You
Kensington.
know what's really good for the American people? No hollowed out towns in Appalachia because of the fentanyl
Because of-
crisis.
Yes, and fentanyl
immigrants.
is something we have to address as a medical
You want to
crisis.
legalize everything.
Well, Robbie,
You just said
I
anyone
want to
with
use
drugs.
You want to
Yes.
legalize it.
Yeah,
Robbie-
you decriminalize
Robbie-
all drugs because
I
then
can't
you
even
remove the
understand
stigma
your
around it.
position
Yes,
because you keep
that's
jumping
it.
from
All
one
right,
to the
so
We're
other.
jumping from topic to topic.
I have one
fair.
question
We're
because
talking
Ryan wrote a
cartels,
whole book
fentanyl.
on Ryan
Cartels
Graham
and
wrote a whole
fentanyl.
book on drugs, so he probably has a lot of thoughts on this. But I have one question for Robbie because you're just sort sort of laughed at Ryan Gerdusky's point that there are people there are hollowed out towns in Appalachia because of fentanyl addictions, opioid addictions.
Yeah,
but you laughed and said because of immigrants. And I think what Ryan would say, and I'll let Ryan respond after you respond to this, Robbie, is that, listen, the relatively open border, that as they would define it, has allowed a lot of people who come in, claim asylum, they have been trafficked, so now they owe debts to their traffickers, to then they're on the line, they actually are bringing fentanyl through our borders.
Yeah. Look, I honestly don't take a strong position on this cartel issue. It seems unwise to me to start a war with Mexico and start bombing them, but like, I'm more moderate on this issue than like the framing of this debate makes it seem. I just want to bring more people into the country legally to do work. They're already doing it, and make it easier to have people come in. The cartels are obviously monstrous and evil organizations. Like, I'm open to an argument that that's the right way to deal with them. I'm very skeptical that this would make us better, this war with Mexico. I absolutely think it would have to be declared by Congress. I don't think there's any appetite to do that. I think the best way to defang the cartels is to have other pathways to immigration to get in the country that don't involve them. I think greater enforcement would be just as good as them as it was for the mafia under Prohibition. But you have tons of disagreement about what the relative alcohol consumption was during
the
points
mafia
of
didn't
Prohibition.
end after Prohibition. The mafia
1980s.
my family was in the mafia at the time. They didn't stop. They were. That didn't stop when alcohol became illegal. They did other things. They will do other things. There will always be a criminal. There will always be a criminal underbelly in this country, no matter what you legalize, no matter what you don't legalize.
But not in people.
They'll be organized.
Right.
Yes, they will be, because there'll be slavery. Because there's an Atlantic article from maybe 8 years ago, a Filipino immigrant who was a child, came here, grew up, and realized he had a slave in his house. He said his parents brought over slaves, and he didn't realize that he was an adult. He goes, wow, they don't have a bed. I'm just realizing this right now. Things like that happen all the time. Indentured servitude happens constantly. There was a raid in upstate New York. 100 children were working on a farm in indentured servitude. They'll be sex traffickers. They'll be having sex as slaves. It happens all
if they're
the time.
not legally allowed to work.
And if we
they're not legally exposed to the CPS system and the education.
If we ease the process of immigrants being able to come in here, we can focus our law enforcement on those.
Wait, I just want to help Robbie out. You're not talking about legally working child sex workers, right?
What we're talking about.
Because that's what he just said.
Underclass of, no, I'm saying having an underclass of people because their status in the country is legal drives them and their families into unsafe work, including that.
There will be different types of illegal activity with people.
Is driven by poverty?
Listen, you're getting far beyond what we're talking about.
That's not what I
Let's give Chase a chance.
No, but the truth is if you want to combat indentured servitude, if you want to combat human trafficking, if you want to combat these things, allow the peaceful people to come here and live here. Allow them to come here. No, allow people who want to come here.
Just give them a piece of paper. So just give them a piece of paper that says it's fine.
Work is illegal, and the legal pathways are
So my
outlawed.
point was that criminal activities like that will not stop. But there are people. You're around my age. I know Jackson, my age. I'm not sure how you are, but I'm going to guess we're all in the same 10-year time.
Our first millennial president.
Okay,
right here.
so we're all millennials. We are very lucky to be here right now because there is an entire lost generation of our people who made one mistake, who did one thing throughout the entire, and their lives are destroyed. And once the drugs are in their community, there is no way to sit there and do anything on the offense. They're always on the defense. They are dependent for the rest of their life, and these drugs are getting worse and worse and worse. And I'm sorry, but it makes me beyond angry in like a real fundamental way in my gut right now that you sit there and you say, as long as they want to do this, people do not want to get hooked on drugs. You end up in circumstantial environments where you do. My aunt ended up on heroin. She was lucky to get off before it became black tar heroin, before it became fentanyl. Otherwise, she'd be dead. Her 2 kids would never been born. Things like that happen. These are our people. Millions are dead, more than the Civil War, World War II. They're all dead. People our age are dead. You were lucky you were born without certain mistakes, because I guarantee you some people in your neighborhood aren't. And if you want to represent them and sit there and say, oh, don't worry about the war on drugs, their cartel members' lives are more valuable than yours. I'm sorry, but how fucking dare you?
Excuse me,
really
that's
makes
not what
me
I'm
angry.
saying.
Yes, you exactly
that is not
are.
what I'm saying.
You're sitting there and saying you can't
No,
sit there and
you're
go
putting
after
words in my
cartel
mouth,
members
man.
because
Listen, I care
Robert,
about
don't roll
the-
your eyes at me.
right,
That is
all right.
exactly
Let's let Chase respond.
That is not emotional
my
manipulation.
family member. Oh,
Guys,
shut
guys.
the fuck up.
Robbie,
Chase is gonna respond.
all you do is say incorrect things
Ryan-
left and right and say, don't worry
Ryan-
about Americans,
Listen,
they'll be fine.
Chase is going to
when I
respond.
say I want to end end a war on drugs, I want to actually put a public health model onto that and say, well, not public health because I don't like the state doing things. I want to see more mutual and direct aid to help get people off of drugs instead of throwing them into jails where they get re-traumatized. They come back out and they use again and get thrown in jail again. This is a cycle that's been created by the drug war. Yes, it is bad that people use drugs. It is bad that people get addicted to drugs and have negative outcomes for their lives. But none of that is improved by increasing a drug war. We increase the policing in our neighborhoods. We keep throwing people in jail. We keep the trauma factories open. We're filling prison beds instead of rehab beds. We are denigrating addicts as if they're lesser than in society than actually providing empathy to them. That is what pisses me off. That's what upsets me.
I understand that.
And so, yes.
I agree with you, but I have a question for you then. How do you do that when there is a country, China specifically, and Mexico, which sits there and always looks for the newest, cheapest, synthetic, more dangerous product? Do you constantly legalize the newest, cheapest synthetic products?
What you do is you decriminalize what people put into their own bodies so they can actually go to a pharmacy and test it, just like they do in Portugal, where they decriminalized all drugs. And guess what? If you're in Portugal, you can take your heroin to a pharmacy, you pay a small fee, and you can know whether it's cut with something. That would actually increase I hate to say it this way, but it would make the drugs better. It would make them less likely to have fentanyl in them.
I get what you're saying. But people in Oregon, they tried that. Portland tried that. It was a miserable failure.
This isn't your book, Ryan. You should probably speak up, right? That this is essentially accidental poisonings because people are taking at a level of potency that they don't want to do.
They think they're taking a Xanax and they're taking fentanyl. That is fraud. That is wrong.
That's because it's all illegal.
I get it. And in Portland, it wasn't. And in Portland, they did mass decriminalization. It was a giant failure. Giant. They had to recriminalize them. It is not the case that once you legalize everything, everything's just safer and better. It's not always the case, especially when dealing with things like synthetic drugs.
Yeah, you should be able to test them and know what's going into your own body. But you can't do that right now as a user.
If you have a hunger, if you have a scratch and you got to sit there and itch in your arm, you will go to the person next to you. If it's cheaper and you've got no money because you burned it all through drugs, you will go to the person selling you whatever is available.
There are negative outcomes to addiction. I'm not arguing.
I understand that.
But what I'm saying is the better way to address those negative outcomes is not to make this into a huge criminal justice thing. And tying this all the way back to immigration, the best way to bankrupt the cartels is to remove the incentive for them to create drugs and
I argue the best way to deal with the cartels is kill them.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but you can't do that without.
Yes, I can.
No. Without invading Mexico, you're not going to be able to take out the cartels south of the border. Without invading south of the border, which violates the sovereignty of other nations, which is something we would never want violated.
Which is what they're currently doing to us right now every day.
Listen, our government kills people all over the world. Our government creates violence all over the world, and that is not justification for somebody to come and attack our nation.
Which we've said. Here's a funny story, though, Robbie, speaking of my book. Prohibition, which you're celebrating here, what Prohibition did is it pushed the production of alcohol underneath the southern border, south of the border, and created these cartels of liquor producers that then created smuggling pipelines up into the United States, into north of into the country. Literally, the smuggling operations that you're talking about trying to shut down were created by the thing that you're celebrating, Prohibition.
Not entirely one, especially when during Prohibition there was not a single entity that controlled the market, right? You had the Kennedy.
It takes a while, sure. Yeah.
Oh, do you think if we just have enough free market time with the cartel will have
yes, free markets
the
generally
cartel?
tend
No,
towards
I'm saying the cartel will eventually just have a competition like Walmart and Kmart. They'll just
no. It's the opposite.
So. No, there's no organization equivalent to the cartel that has such a monopoly that had it during Prohibition. There wasn't a single crime family. There was 6 or 7 in New York.
Actually, I slightly push back on that because what it is. No, the CIA.
Okay, nonetheless.
The cartel's
it's not the same thing at all. And also,
no, it's not the same
it's being produced by fentanyl in China. I mean, there are ways to sit there and change this operation. It's not being mass produced here. Yeah, it's not perfect. Yes, some will get through, but I'm sorry, there's literally more dead Americans from fentanyl than from the Civil War. That's a problem.
I think if anybody thought that going to war with Mexico would solve that,
you're not going to war with Mexico.
Okay.
I mean, again, this is what it's like from your guys' side all night. $1 trillion war with Mexico. So you take something that we haven't said and you put it in our mouths and you respond to that without actually responding to things that we've said. Ryan's been doing it. Robbie's been doing it. Chase is not doing it as much. He's done it a little bit. But and I've sat here and listened to this. We're going to war with Mexico. Go to war with Mexico. Mexico is not going to go to war with us.
Can we call it war within Mexico? Will that be better? If we say it's within Mexico, we're not going to war with the Mexico government.
How about just killing terrorists?
Killing the narco terrorists.
Yeah.
You're right. War on terror has worked great in this country.
You know what? Is Osama bin Laden alive or dead?
Good. I'm glad he's dead.
Okay,
but,
is ISIS around or not?
How did that ISIS K do?
We didn't have to spend trillions and trillions of dollars.
You're right. We should have waited for
El Chapo's,
entire
El
world.
Chapo's in
Yeah.
prison, so
Yeah, there's
I guess
a
that's over.
lot of.
So here's a question to just this is a little bit of a pivot, but we haven't yet discussed arguments that we often hear from people like Michael Anton on the right about this kind of social fabric of different communities. I think you, Jack, brought up Minnesota.
I've been
earlier.
trying to.
The problems
Sorry,
that
Jack,
the,
it's
the
my
problems
fault.
with integrating
It's my fault.
the problems with integrating culturally different populations at high scales, especially in different parts of the country. Why is that a concern on your end? And then we'll go over here and say, different ways that maybe that can be alleviated.
Can I actually start?
Go ahead, Robbie.
I think culturally assimilating people is a huge problem right now. I'm talking, of course, of the green-haired, woke, college campus people who don't respect our values, who love socialism, who don't want to work, who make all the wrong life choices and are making our society much worse off. I am grateful that we have these immigrants coming into the country to show them the way, because I am very worried about the inability of
extend to
people in our
Dearborn?
country to assimilate.
Does your concern
Like
there
Ilhan
extend to
Omar? Would
Dearborn?
Ilhan Omar qualify for believing in your values?
Well, I wouldn't vote for Ilhan Omar.
Okay, but
Do
she's
you
an
do you
immigrant,
have
so does
concerns
she.
about what's
But she's
happened
here,
in
but she's
Dearborn?
here.
No, I want to
concerns
know.
about people.
Is
You're
Ilhan
from
Omar
Robbie's
the
from
immigrant?
Michigan.
I am
So
from.
Robbie
Are you
knows this.
so
I'm sure.
From Michigan. I
Robbie's
lived in
from
Michigan. I went to the
Michigan.
University of Michigan. They're heavy Muslim population there.
Yeah.
It has not shredded the social fabric of Michigan one iota. You can't
Right.
tell that
Would you
it's
Is
different at
clitorectomy
all.
higher in Michigan now than it was 30
Is
years
what?
ago? Clitorectomies?
He's talking about
the
FGM.
procedure.
Yes. Are they higher now than they were 30
Female
years ago?
genital
I'm
So,
just asking.
no, that's a serious
Robbie,
question.
You're sitting there and saying it hasn't affected the culture at all. Okay, is
Respond.
clitorectomies higher now than they were 30 years ago?
What's the
That
response?
seems bad, and we should prohibit it.
But you know what? You shouldn't bring it in from immigration. That's all my argument.
Is that a problem or not?
I don't care.
You don't care about
This is so beyond anything.
No,
This
yeah,
is
no,
just-
it doesn't. No,
I'm very
people don't
sick
matter.
of this argument.
Why
It's
is
people. People are
that?
cogs for the corporations. So it doesn't matter what type of person comes in. It doesn't matter what type of cultural background they have.
I have at
It
no
doesn't
point
matter
said that it doesn't
what-
matter. In
what
fact, I
matters.
conceded. I say that it does matter who comes in.
You just
And
said
I
you don't
am fine
care.
to have
He
somebody.
asked you a specific question. You said you don't care. After
what I
laughing
mean
at
is
you.
what you just
that I
said.
didn't realize this debate was going to be 2 hours long.
Neither did I. Yeah.
I'm a little worn down, I'll be honest.
I am out of. I am out of
Closing
bubble.
statements. Closing
But
statements.
no,
I
Jay,
am
let's
out
get
of
People,
bubble.
let me say one more thing on this.
No,
there
this
are
is the best part.
There are Muslim people in Michigan who are as sick and disgusted by the excesses of wokeness as anyone else. That is my primary
That's true.
concern about America is the threats that come to our culture
but what do
from
they-
the
what do
far
those same
left,
people wanna
from a
replace it with?
secular and anti-religious
But what
left
do those
that
same
hates our
people wanna
traditions and
replace
hates
it with?
freedom and hates freedom of speech. And there are lots of things I'm sure I disagree with many of my Muslim neighbors on back in Michigan, including on what's going on in Israel. I don't agree with them at all.
What about
But
free
I also have
speech in
disagreements
Europe?
again with the native population. So those are some of my most
What about
vicious
Charlie
and
Hebdo?
vehement
Is that a
disagreements.
serious problem of immigration?
Yeah, Europe has. Look, if I was in Europe, I might be advocating a different position. I openly say that they're taking in a lot of refugees at once, and there seems to me to be a more worrisome correlation between some of the crimes and sexual assault problems they've had in the cities there. I
So
see
what's
it.
the-
I see
so
the
what's your
statistics,
point?
but
What's
it's
the
not
point?
here. Is not the case.
What's the
Here, the
point?
crime we have is not correlated to the immigrant population whatsoever. It's not.
First off, if assimilation is a concern, which I believe it is, we want people to be able to assimilate here eventually. You don't have to be able to speak the language to come here. Many immigrants came here speaking Italian or German or what have you, and they prospered, they created a business, or they worked, and they made better lives for their children. But assimilation is an issue. And the truth is that people who come here legally through a legal means, through a legal process, assimilate far quicker than those who come through an illegal process, or there's no process for them to come through here.
Can I ask you a follow-up
So
question?
amnesty.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yes.
If you said anyone wants to come, any workers, anyone wants to come, if that number went from 1 million a year to 140, because that's what the Gallup poll says. I think it says 180, but let's say 150, whatever. 150 million showed up in like a 5-year period. Would they all assimilate to our culture, for our minority culture?
First off, I don't think that many people would come here.
Gallup literally said it.
But
Okay.
Gallup
Well,
said it.
let's say
but if a lot
100
of people
million.
come here,
Say 50
our
million.
nation
Yeah.
is one of assimilation of the melting pot. That's what we do
When we have
for
controls,
generations and generations
Chase, when
over
we have
time.
controls, we
Yeah.
have controls.
You
that
don't get a melting
assimilation
pot
for
when you
Italians
start
and Germans that you
pouring.
mentioned.
We already
everything.
import culture from
Chase,
all over the world. We
Chase.
import culture from all over the
Let-
world,
let
and we
him
export
finish.
the best of it outward. It doesn't, and immigrants are part of that. They are part of the fabric of this country.
Chase, then when you said Germans and Italians, yes, they followed a 50-year pause in immigration from the 1924 to 1960, whatever, 7.
Yeah,
That's
but during the
literally
years they were
because-
immigrating, during the years that people were immigrating during LSI, and that was the year of no Irish need apply, that was the year that basically anybody from Europe was deemed dirty, stupid, not worth hiring.
Southern Europe mostly, yeah.
But the point is that we had the exact same things against populations today. They have every potential to make great things. They have every potential to do great things in this country.
But you're making a qualitative
wait.
argument. We're making a quantitative argument.
Yeah.
So you're saying all immigrants will be this way, whether they're from Southern Europe, whether they're from the Middle
Africa,
East, whether they're from Africa, whether they're from Central America, Mexico, etc. And that's just not the case. These are different parts of the world with different cultures, with different cultural backgrounds, many of which, by the way, if you have controlled immigration, so controls like what Ryan's talking about, keep it low, it does create the necessity for assimilation. But if you have mass immigration, their whole population comes
Ryan
home.
was arguing for
There's no
Do we need
need.
to keep immigration from, for instance,
There's no need
Sweden
for them
and
to
Finland
assimilate
and
then
Norway
because you
low?
just brought half
we
the
only
country
have
here.
a
I would like poor people
0.3%?
from Norway and Sweden actually not to come. Yes, it's true. I don't want them, also because they also probably vote for more socialism because that's how they have government.
But this is how you get more. And by the way, Robbie, there was actually something you said earlier that I really wanted to address, which I think kind of gets to this. That you said we're not in danger of tyranny because of immigration, and I said, have you looked at the polls in Texas?
What is the implication?
So if and when Texas, let me explain.
Texas is going to vote for Donald Trump this year. I'm
They
very
will,
confident.
They will this year. But
They
if and when Texas imports enough migrants that Texas goes blue, there is no chance of anyone other than a Democrat being elected president for possibly 80 years.
What happens when the whole country
So then
is
what
California?
happens?
But what happens when the whole country is California?
A, I'm fine with barring them from voting.
So now
because
we
I
get
just want them to be able
California.
to come here and participate in our economic health. B, I
How are
don't
you gonna
concede that
enforce
that's
that?
going to happen.
How are you
Again,
gonna force
the
people to vote? You don't
trajectory
make
in
them
our country is,
citizens.
That's not how it
Virginia
works.
has
That's not how it
flipped.
works,
That's not
though.
how it works.
Virginia's on,
We have
on
no election
the
integrity for these types of things.
Virginia's a state that
state
flips back and
almost,
forth.
yeah.
Again, what I'm most worried about is affluent white and black people concentrate, the government contractor class, the most liberal people on earth, the progressives. They have come because of the growth of government, taken over Virginia, and have made it more of a blue state. That is what worries me. The immigrants coming in, they are gettable. They are clearly gettable by Republicans. You're right. Now I agree with something you said earlier that like just pursuing the most pro-amnesty or whatever policy. Yeah, they don't give a fuck about that.
So-
they don't care about that at all.
Robbie-
they can be appealed to by the sort of messaging that is appealing to everyone else in the country on the economy, on bringing down inflation, on all sorts
So
of
why
things. I'm
is
not
it
going to say
never-
an immigration
but
policy.
So
why
Robbie
is it
and
never-
Chance,
Robbie, why-
this is a question for Robbie and Chance.
Why has
There's
this
no
never
evidence for the fact
happened?
that them
Because the
streaming
Republicans
in has
denigrate
flipped the
immigrants.
state.
here's a question for
George
these guys.
California.
George
Here's
H.W.
California.
Ronald Reagan didn't embrace immigrants.
Ronald Reagan was the governor of California.
Ronald Reagan
Richard
got
Nixon was
30% of
governor
the Hispanic
California.
vote. What are you
Texas will be
talking
the
about?
next
I'm talking about,
California.
I'm talking about
if you pursue
Republicans
these
today.
policies.
So-
Republicans who want to market
I'm
themselves as
talking about
immigrants are doing a
ever.
bad
Let him
job.
Ever,
respond, let him
Chase,
respond.
ever. Why have they never voted for not Ronald Reagan amnesty, George H.W. Bush amnesty, Bob Dole supported
I agree.
amnesty?
The amnesty is not a persuade. They
They
don't care
never.
about that.
I mean,
they agree.
you could not be more pro-immigration than George H.W. Bush. He literally increased the numbers.
But the point
to
is-
a
I
million.
don't think it's
The
pro.
point-
Right, I don't
but-
think pro-immigration
he did
is a selling
everything.
point to
But
them.
They don't care.
But the response to Robbie, I would say, is that look, this is how you get a state like California to become the California in just what from. Reagan was governor in the 60s, and then
We had a Republican
Nixon
governor
before
in
that.
08. We had Republican governors in the 90s. We had Republican governor in the 90s. That was the ballot 64-46, Prop 46,
Right.
whatever, 48.
And now that state is gone.
Yeah.
It is gone for
Okay.
Republicans, electorally speaking, and certainly gone in terms of all of the policies that you guys claim to say you want. Now, this mass immigration
Not
is
all the
going to bring
policies
that.
I say. Actually, California just recently defeated a ballot initiative, a race preferences
Yes.
initiative that is opposed by Asian immigrants who are the most discriminated against class under the racial preferencing system. Again, that's anti-wokeness of immigrants coming through
That's
time
only
So
and
because
let
time
me
they had
let me
enough
direct
to
this to
offset
Chase.
the
Let me
black
direct
and
this to
Hispanic
Chase.
vote.
So do you not have concerns that if our immigration policy looked more like, let's say, Europe's 10 years ago, Europe's 15 years ago, are we inviting in more potential attacks like on Charlie Hebdo? Are we inviting in some of the more serious assimilation problems that Robbie alluded to? I don't know what you think about those, Chase. I won't answer the question for you, but if you do share those concerns about some types of assimilation, wouldn't the policies that you guys have argued on behalf of tonight create more of those problems?
I think the most
Let
likely.
Chase respond.
Yeah, I don't think they would make the problems worse. Those problems are going to exist. Assimilation problems will exist. I don't think allowing more people to come here necessarily makes it where assimilation becomes harder. I would argue that more people coming here sees more people exposed to the American way of life. They export those values not just to them, but to the other people within their community. Like just look at, if you want to look at Muslims. Muslims in America, far less radical than Muslims in the Middle East. Many of them immigrated from somewhere else. They came, they lived the American way. No, forever. They always have been. They have always been less radical than those in the Middle East. And this is because they come here, they experience the American way of life, they assimilate to our culture over time, they create businesses, they create jobs.
Like the Boston Bombers?
Yeah, our magic dirt keeps
I'm
them
not
like
saying,
forever.
you're not going to get me to say that no crime will ever come from immigrants if they come here, because that's an
In answer to your question, Emily,
but that's an
my utter
impossibility.
conviction is that the person most likely to carry out some attack on hate speech grounds, that a publication or something was engaged in hate speech, is a baseball bat-toting graduate of Evergreen College who is a native-born citizen with wealthy white or black parents.
The bigger point about it,
that's Antifa. That's everyone participates in Antifa. Trashes.
The reason the
Sets
Italian
libraries
mafia
on fire
broke
when
up
Andy knows
over
that.
time was not because it was partly because we stopped Italian immigration in large part, and they assimilate over 3 generations with a near fixed population. The reason that Muslim immigrants are not that radical is because we have not ghettoized them. They don't have, I mean, outside of like Michigan, there's a few places, but overall, the Muslim population in this country do not live in ghettos, in places where they are completely living amongst themselves, and radicalization could happen. That does happen when you have mass groups of people in any given place. It will become worse, not better. If there's fewer, they will assimilate with the majority culture, even if it's a majority, shit lib culture, whatever the case is, they will eventually assimilate over time if they're fixed. If they
Is that what
grow,
you're saying happened in California?
It happened with a lot of places. Yeah.
Okay, so if we're already having problems with Antifa and the green-haired Evergreen State College graduates are blue-haired, I forget what you said, Robbie. I'm not sure which irks you most, but if we're having...
I know a lot of purple-haired people in my life, so I can never throw them under the bus.
Well, yes, of course you will get
Reason
reason. So if let's say this is an Ann Coulter argument, a common Ann Coulter argument, for example. So if we already have
Vivek
problems,
Ramaswamy shouldn't be president.
well, that's a new
agree.
Ann Coulter argument. If so, we already have problems with crime, or we already have problems with hate speech, encroachments on free speech from our own native-born population. Why should we? Even if there are lower rates, let's accept the research. Even if there are lower rates from the research that you guys have cited of crime or problems with assimilation, whatever it is, why should we bring more of it in instead of dealing with the problems that are plaguing people throughout the country, American citizens?
Because on the whole, immigration is a good thing. It enlarges the economic pie. So on the whole, yes, we can look at specific things and say, yes, crime is bad, and when people come here to commit crime, that is obviously bad. But if you look at the whole picture of what immigrants contribute to this nation, what they have contributed to this nation, as they assimilate, become Americans themselves over time too, is a growing of the economic pie. There are more benefits to immigration than the negatives. That is just where the statistics are in terms of economic output.
If we'd have stuck with net zero immigration starting in the 1850 or whenever you want to, we would have lost World War II.
But again, you're jumping all over the place.
We had net zero immigration during World War II.
We did have that during World War II, by the way.
What's that?
We did have that during World War II, by the way.
Yes, but the population had exploded in the 50 years after the Civil War.
We won the biggest war during near net zero immigration. What are you talking about?
Because of
at a time
because
when,
we
by
had
the way,
grown
we were
from a
fighting some of the
backwater
countries where those
country
people
in
were from.
1820 to becoming the most powerful country in the country 120 years later as our population quadrupled.
Because they were all, okay. Yes, when we took in 99% English, Scottish, Welsh, Irish, German, Dutch, all speak nearly a common language and a common culture, they were able to build a very good country.
There was a lot of internal tensions among those people, though. I mean, like my great-great-grandparents were, I think, a Polish and a Serbian, and it was considered a mixed marriage. Like the families couldn't even get along. The idea there's like a shared heritage. There was religious tension as well then between Catholics and other groups.
Having been settled by Somalians, Ethiopians, Brazilians, they didn't exist. But yeah. Would we be America? No, we were America because we were uniquely settled by Brits.
The Irish weren't considered white people. I mean, these are so different groups. It's like we've consolidated.
We are American because who settled us were Brits who believed in the ideals of that time period and founded the greatest country and kept it that way.
At the beginning, yeah.
Yeah.
of course.
But then we've taken in
Had we been-
all of those ethnic groups you're talking about that we've taken in were so fundamentally dissimilar from each other. and
Not
from
that
no,
much.
they really were. Oh my
Not
God, they
really
were.
that
But
much.
we also live in a world
No,
today
they
where
weren't.
I think
50 years ago, they didn't want a Catholic. Majority of the people in the country were afraid of a Catholic being president.
So yeah, 40% of people in this country
power's
can
still on.
identify a family member that came through Ellis Island during the last wave of migration. Those
In
people,
Also,
no,
most-
those
also,
people
most of the
would
people
not
that-
be here today if we had net zero
In
migration. at the time.
1990, 50% of the population could identify themselves to the American Revolution.
Most of the people who
To
built
enhance this American Revolution. So what are you
boss,
talking
most of
about?
the people that built the country in the 19th century were actually from Africa, to your point.
That is not true either. That's
Look
another
it up.
nonsense lie. The majority of people from Africa did what?
Who built the country.
That is
He's
not
saying
true.
slavery built
That is
America.
not true. That is such a lie. Like all the wealth in the
Where
entire
did they
history
come
of the
from?
country.
Not Africa?
Most of the wealth in this country did not come from slavery. Most
were
of
the
the
cities
wealth
built
that
by
was
slaves?
created in this country did not come from
This
slavery.
is
a lot of stuff.
Slavery was
Charleston
actually
was-
Charleston was
Philadelphia,
Philadelphia, New York, Boston,
San
Charleston
San
was,
Francisco.
yes, there was a lot of slave
Yes,
They're
New
all-
labor.
they're all
York
built by
was
slaves.
nothing.
All built by
There
slaves.
was
All
a
right,
lot
this
of
is-
slave labor
before
in
the
Boston.
slaves
Slave
showed
showed
up.
up.
Look, we're going to go to closing statements because we have 2 minutes left.
Okay.
So each of you.
Thank God.
We have made it.
10
almost
seconds
at 9
each.
p.m.
10 seconds each.
But okay, we will start with you, Robbie. Then
Great.
we'll go to Ryan, and we'll go back and forth, just like we did in the opening. Robbie Suave.
Okay, I've said everything I wanted to say. I don't have a lot
Excellent.
more else to say. Immigration
Chase.
is great, and we should have more of it.
Yeah, I support the immigration. I support making it easier for people to be able to come here, work here, create, and add to the economic pie. And I want to see more of that. And I'm campaigning on that right now.
Jack.
The amnesty policies that we've heard tonight would destroy this country. They would tear this country apart. They would actually lead us down the road to socialism far faster than any of the people that we've talked about that are currently here now.
Ryan, go ahead.
When
10
I'm good with that. Then if 10 seconds, immigration should be safe, legal, and rare.
There you go. All right.
Such a good line. I like that line.
Thank you.
We made it to 9 p.m. Everyone who's viewing, thank you so much for being here, viewing or listening. We appreciate you sticking with us. I found this very interesting, very shouty on all of your, from everyone. So that's always a lot of fun. Ryan, did you have fun?
I had a blast. Everybody should watch we had Vosh and Dave Smith debating Ukraine. That'll be
That's
up tomorrow over at Counterpoints.
Yeah, that's right.
So that'll be fun.
And we are there every Wednesday, every Friday, doing debates, not unlike this one. This has been a wonderful conversation hosted by ZeroHedge, so we thank them for that. I'm Emily Jashinsky. I was joined by my co-host, Ryan Grimm. Thanks for watching.
Real pleasure. See you guys.
Immigrants actually improve our economy.
Communities are stronger because of the immigrants.
Another invader perpetuating some violent crime.
They're very content to let it remain broken.
Other nations do not like mass immigration.
We're going to build a wall. It's going to be built.